All right, everybody, if we can have your attention, we're going to get going. A couple people coming in. So I will say first, we have, I think, about 100, over 100 people here. So if you see people come in, please help them get into an empty seat. We're close to the max in this room, but I think we're good right now. So I'm very impressed by this turnout today. I personally feel that with the passage of the Farm Bill and industrial hemp being a potential new opportunity in the county, we want to do what we can to try to facilitate the process as it goes for the next few weeks, months, and years, what the regulatory environment is, what the market is, how, what are the things that local people here need to know about this particular crop before they get into it. So very excited to have everybody here and have some really good information for you. I'd like to thank Jalisha and the Soil and Water District for helping to coordinate this event. We have some really exciting speakers today. Chris, our featured speaker from Cornell, is really going to give you some good information, combined with Larry Smart from Chris from Ag and Markets, excuse me, and Larry from Cornell Cooperative. You have some really good information here, as well as we have two different growers that are going to be speaking as well. So that's the real information, and I'm just here to welcome you and just let you know that as we go through this process, we're going to try to be supportive and helpful with all the different resources we have to try to make sure everyone has the best information they can moving forward with what is potentially an opportunity for our local farmers in the county. So with that said, who am I turning it over to first?
Chris.
Chris, thank you very much for being here.
So good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate everybody coming out today. My name's Chris Logue. I'm with New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets, and I'm the Division Director in Plant Industry. And plant industry, little known division at Ag and Markets until industrial hemp came along. We actually are one of the original programmatic divisions at Ag and Markets, probably go back into actually before the department was even Ag and Markets. I think it had a precursor name. So back into the teens or 20s. I'll give you a little bit of background about what our day job is in plant industry, and then I'll tell you about what we've done around industrial hemp over the past 2 years. So the day job at Ag and Markets in the Division of Plant Industry is, as the name implies, everything plant health related. So we do registration and inspection of nursery growers and dealers all around the state. We do consumer protection type work around what we call agricultural commodities: seed, fertilizer, lime, soil, and plant inoculants. So there are regulations that relate to the labeling and sale of those types of agricultural commodities or products. We also do the apiary inspection program. We write a lot of certificates on the apiary inspection program for migratory beekeepers to transport their bees out of state for pollination and then return to New York later on in the year. Also certify lots of different plants and plant products for shipment to markets in other states. A lot of apples, believe it or not, go from New York to Washington, California, and Arizona. A lot of gift type small quantities of apples. We also certify a whole lot of sweet corn to go to Texas, which I never knew we sent sweet corn to Texas till I worked for Ag and Markets. But certain times of the year they don't really have the conditions to grow sweet corn. We have an oversupply, so our product goes down south. Also do a lot of work with invasive species in cooperation with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and several other state agencies that are involved in the Invasive Species Council. I'm probably missing a few things in the list, but thing that I'm here to talk about today is industrial hemp. So back in 2015, we started down the road of industrial hemp. Can you advance the slide, please? And what I'm going to talk about today, I'll talk a little bit about our research partners. I'll talk a little bit about the history of what we've done with the industrial hemp program. And I'll also talk about where we think we're going right now, although a little bit in flux. So first off, I want to talk a little bit about research partners and folks who work on the program. And at the last program we did, Larry here, my good friend from Cornell, gave me a hard time because I didn't have any pictures at all in my presentation. So I gave this presentation to the Public Information Officer, and I do want to make special note that the first picture in the presentation, Larry, is a picture of you with my colleague Tim Sweeney, who's a policy analyst in the department. And that picture was taken, I believe, last July, I think it was, at the National Industrial Hemp Regulatory Conference, which we hosted out in Geneva, and Larry was a great partner on putting that together. And we had, I think, 70 or so people from around the country who were involved or contemplating getting involved in industrial hemp. It was pretty much all officials from state departments of agriculture, and it's the third annual one. I think we did a great job with bringing folks together and learned quite a lot. And what Larry showed us in his field trials was a big part of that, as well as a couple of growers that we talked to out there. So I always want to for sure acknowledge Cornell and all the great research work that they've done. They've been hand in hand with us on the outreach side of things and on the research side of things. And we couldn't have done what we've done so far and made the progress we've made so far without the help from Cornell. Although I do have a fairly large staff around the state that does inspection work, the group in Albany, there's 7 of us, and really 2 of us or 2.5 of us are working on industrial hemp. And so a lot of information going through a small group of people. So be patient with us if you're trying to get a hold of us or if you have questions. It takes us a while to get through all of the inquiries. Also want to just acknowledge some of the other schools that have been involved in the research efforts, and these were some of the first research partners that we had in the state. Cornell, Morrisville has done some good agronomic research working with farmers around the state, and Binghamton has had some good research work working with a couple of companies down in the southern tier. So we're very, very fortunate for that. And we've got about, I want to say 148, 150, somewhere around that number of registered growers and processors right now. And we licensed in 2018 the production of a little bit under 3,000 acres. And probably we didn't quite plant that much around the state because of seed availability and weather and all the things that impact this crop, but certainly making progress on the acreage. Can you go to the next one, please? Thank you. So a little bit about the current status of the program and the history. So the original bill that authorized us to do industrial hemp research was signed in December of 2014. And we had, I think, a year to put together the first set of regulations. And the first set of regulations, first off, I don't think we made the 1 year time frame. And part of the reason for that is that the first set of regulations that we put together was pretty onerous as far as what the security requirements were. And we also initially limited participation in the program to institutions of higher education, which is, as I said in the previous slide, that's why Morrisville, Cornell, Binghamton were the first entities out of the gate working with us. In 2017, we saw a lot of significant growth in the industry. We actually opened it up to actual growers. Still, we were requiring that there was a research component to the program. And again, at this point, we're up around 148, 150 growers and processors. We recently were open for CBD processing as well as CBD production back in December, and we received 348 applications. Some entities submitted multiple applications, so in other words, an entity would submit a grower application and a processor application. And we've just finished going through the final review on those, and they're working on getting the letters out the door, letting people know if we need more information, if they're in, if they're not in, and how to proceed. For a while now, actually since probably last year, we've been accepting grain and fiber applications on a rolling basis, and we still have that open, so anybody who's interested in looking at production for grain and fiber can apply at any time. I don't have, the one question probably that I'll be asked today is when are you going to open up CBD again? And I don't know the answer to that question. I've not been directed to do that. But I anticipate it will be open again at some point in the future. Not sure if it's going to be, imminent or further out in the future. We have the next slide, please. So a little bit on the federal landscape side. So kind of what started us down the road was the 2014 Farm Bill. The 2014 Federal Farm Bill legitimized industrial hemp research and basically allowed the states to put programs together. And as I mentioned before, we actually also had a law passed in New York. It's Article 29 of the Agriculture and Markets Law. It's been updated a couple times since 2014. And these are the laws that basically allowed us to begin to look at an industrial hemp research pilot program. Recently, back in, I think, December, around the 20th or 21st of December, the 2018 Federal Farm Bill passed. And one of the big things that's in the 2018 Federal Farm Bill are some changes for the industrial hemp program and for industrial hemp in general. So key thing here is the first point, which is that the 2018 Farm Bill does remove industrial hemp from the definition of marijuana in the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Okay, I will tell you that there is still the State Controlled Substances Act still has similar wording to what it has had in the past, and they're looking in the current legislative session at changing the State Controlled Substances Act to reflect what's gone on at the federal level. Also, the Farm Bill creates a framework within the USDA for the regulation of hemp. And so basically the bare bones or the skeleton of what a program will need to look like going forward is outlined in the actual federal Farm Bill. It does not necessarily designate who or what entity under USDA will be overseeing the industrial hemp programs nationally, but I will tell you that subsequent from when I've put these slides together, it appears as though the Agricultural Marketing Service, or AMS, will be the group that actually at USDA provides oversight to the states. What's listed out in the Farm Bill is that hemp growers will still need to register with states. States have the opportunity to submit a state plan and take primary regulatory authority for industrial hemp growing within their state boundaries, which obviously we're kind of into this at this point, and we certainly will put a plan forth. It still is going to require THC testing, so if you go to the definitions of industrial hemp, the definition is that industrial hemp is cannabis sativa with a THC content of 0.3% or lower. The 2018 Farm Bill also clarifies a little bit about how the testing is to be done and what compounds in the plant are to be looked at. And so we'll be looking at trying to change up our program to get in compliance with that. And the other thing that's expressly written in the Federal Farm Bill of 2018 is that the FDA retains their regulatory authority over CBDs. So we've got some really good stuff here. So for instance, removal of industrial hemp from the definition of marijuana in the Controlled Substances Act is probably going to make the movement of seeds and plants and also movement of raw materials or crops from place to place for processing a lot easier and a lot less risky. and may make the international imports of seeds a little bit easier going forward, although I will say that the other thing that's in the federal farm bill is that until such times as states submit plans to the federal government, that we should be continuing to operate under the guidance of 2014. So that's what we're doing, still requiring registration, still requiring testing, still requiring registration. You go to the next one, please. So I talked a little bit about this. So seed imports, right now, the way seed imports work, a lot of seed has come in from places like Canada and the European Union. And so certain entities in the states have been given or applied for and been awarded permits to do the seed imports. And so Cornell has an import permit, we have an import permit at the department. And so if you're a registered grower with us and you want to bring seed in from Canada, the European Union, some other place, some other country, you fill out some paperwork, you send it to us, we then submit a permit to US or to DEA and facilitate the import of the seed. DEA, the guidance they've given us at this point is that we should continue to do that. Hopefully in the future, the need for the federal import permit for bringing seed in will go away. That'll make life a whole lot easier for everybody. Can we go to the next slide, please? So a little bit about our process here as it is right now. As I said, we're not open for CBD right now, but we are open for grain and fiber. Basically, I think it's a 3 to 4 page application. You come up with you tell us who you are, you tell us where you are, you come up with a research plan, and research plan is very, very broad. So it could be, I want to grow industrial hemp for grain and see how I can sell it at the farmer's market, or I want to see how it works as a grain product in trail mix or snacks or whatever you want to say. Okay, we would evaluate that application and either accept it or reject it. And then at that point, if it's accepted, we send you a research partner agreement, which is on our website if you want to review it. And basically, the research partner agreement outlines what the state's responsibilities and obligations are to you and what your obligations and responsibilities are to the state. In that partner agreement, you're giving us permission to do the inspections that are required of the facility, give us access to the fields or any place where seed is stored, what have you. You're also giving us permission to do the sampling. And so that's one of our inspectors who's out in central New York actually doing, working on sampling. And so we have a sampling protocol, which is also on our website. You can review that. We've worked with a number of different states as well as with Cornell to put that sampling protocol together. Basically what they do is they go into the field, they walk, they exclude from sampling the outer 10 feet because the light levels are higher and that's more likely to test high for THC in the edges of the field. They then walk through the field doing basically a W pattern and randomly take samples. One of the things that Larry will probably talk about is the fact that this is not like if you're used to growing field corn, you're used to growing soybeans, you look out over that field and pretty much the population of plants all look like twins, right? They're very, very consistent. Industrial hemp does not have the consistency of some of the other crops that we grow, particularly when you get into the CBD varieties. So we try to take a representative sample. So in other words, if there's 20% of the plants in the field that are really, really tall and big, we aren't going to go to just the 20% that are really, really tall and big. We're going to get some big ones, some small ones, some medium ones, and try to take a representative sample. At that point, after it's sampled, the sample and the paperwork go to the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets Food Testing Lab. It's on the state office campus in Albany. The chemists take the sample, they dry the sample, then they'll grind the sample, remove some of the larger matter that's in there, the stems and things of that nature, and then they run it through a lab, either with gas chromatography to see what's in there. Okay, at that point we will get a inspection report saying either that it's a pass or a fail based upon what the sample comes back as. Luckily, we had pretty much with the sampling and the sampling protocol and lab protocol we're using right now, we've had a very small number of failures. As we transition to the higher standard that's going to be required in the 2018 Farm Bill, we're going to have probably more failures. If we applied that standard, or if we had applied that new standard in 2018, we would have had 41 samples that went over the THC level. 41. Out of 215, I think is what the number was, so about 20%. Yep. Next slide, please. So a little bit on CBD, and I won't get into this too far at this point. So there's FDA guidance out there on CBD, which basically says that it's unlawful to introduce food containing added CBD or THC, and unlawful to market CBD or THC products as dietary supplements. Go to the next slide, please. So we've taken a little bit of a different approach in New York State. Some states have said that CBD can only be sold in their medical marijuana program. Some states have said CBD can't be sold. The reality is that the product is available through lots of different venues at this point. In New York, we're allowing CBD processing. We're not allowing CBDs to be added to foods, human or animal foods, unless the product is manufactured, labeled, and marketed as a dietary supplement. And so if you go to the Code of Federal Regulations, it outlines what those requirements are, requires a third-party audit, and requires good manufacturing practices. We're working with some of the educational entities out there to try to get more training available so folks can be in compliance with this. Like anything with a new program, it's a pilot program, number one. It's evolving over time. We're learning about it as the growers are learning about it, as the universities are learning about it. Policies are evolving and changing as time goes by. But what we're trying to do at the state is trying to create an environment where there can be entrepreneurship, there can be some experimentation and development of good products and good markets from industrial hemp. So with that, I will end. It's our contact information. It's our industrial hemp mailbox. Please, please, please be patient with us. Like I said at the beginning, there's 2.5 of us that are working on this, and that mailbox probably on any given day has 50 or 60 messages in it, and a lot of the questions require thought. They require us to talk with attorneys in our legal department. They require us to talk with policymakers in other agencies within the state. And so some of these answers are hard and they're challenging, and if you don't hear back within, don't be surprised if you don't have an answer to a complicated question in a very, very short time. So I'll take a couple questions, and I don't want to take too much of Larry's time. Your hand was up first, so.
Yes, sir. You said that you are looking to create good entrepreneurship, great products, and I missed the middle one that you were saying.
Just a good business environment and in an area where, a new area of agriculture where some experimentation and learning can take place. Yes.
If it fails, what happens to your crop if it fails? Is it confiscated or what happens?
So if the crop fails, it cannot go to market, and it gets destroyed. And we don't wanna do that, so one of the things that we are always telling people to be doing, and I think Larry would agree with this, is if you get into this and you're growing industrial hemp, you should be monitoring that crop through the season to see what the THC levels are. And you should be doing that through, through a good service lab. One of the challenges we've had is we don't have a lot of service labs, or I think any service labs right now in New York that will do this work, but there are in other states. And monitor that, okay? So if you're starting to approach the 0.3% THC, and you find that out through a service sample, what I would recommend that you do is harvest it early. Part of the agreement with Ag and Markets is that you tell us when you're harvesting. You tell us like 14 or 20 days ahead. That triggers us to come out and do the regulatory sample. And so we try to be very responsive on those and get out there as quickly as we can. But you as the grower should be monitoring, and there's nothing wrong with if you are approaching 0.3%, that you should go ahead and harvest, let us know. We're not gonna ding you if you're at 0.29 when we take a regulatory sample, or you show us a service sample and you're at 0.29 and you wanna harvest, or 0.25.
So that one sample could mean the entire crop?
Yeah, it's a composite sample. We look at it from a field basis. You know, one of the challenges that we also have is the resources to do the sampling, to do the lab work, and to turn it around quickly. And so when we're looking at what to sample, we do look more closely at CBD producers, because the CBD varieties are more likely to go hot than the grain and fiber varieties, so there's a higher risk there. And then we're beginning to develop a variety list, varieties that tend to go hot. And Larry will talk a lot more about the genetics and everything, and some of the challenges around that. But we're trying to create an environment where success can happen versus trying to ding people on, on technicalities. Yep. Did you have a question also?
This answered my question.
All right, very good. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that the new Farm Bill makes it easier to ship plant material seeds across state lines. Does it also make shipment of CBD oil across state lines easier? And also, how do you deal with growers that are out of state shipping into New York State in terms of your testing and registration?
So, the way it's been so far is that nothing from New York can go to a state that doesn't have a program. And a state that doesn't have a program can't ship into a state that does have a program, because that would be an unauthorized grow. CBD, as far as whether it comes in across state lines or not, we're not looking at that in the plant industry. Where we end is at the 0.3% THC. We've got other entities in the state that are kind of trying to wrestle with the whole CBD issue and see, what makes sense. We're kind of looking at the federal landscape out there and what other states are doing. I'm gonna take two more. Who should I take? I'll take you.
Now, you said the 3% level,
0.3.
0.3, I'm sorry.
Yep.
0.3 if it goes over that. Now, when farmers growing for the oil,
Mm-hmm.
is that also the case, 0.3?
0.3.
So out of the 40, out of 200 people you said that failed,
Mm-hmm.
so pretty much you're getting the same seed as a CB, say somebody growing for oil as somebody growing for, say, fiber.
Not necessarily, no.
So, okay.
Yep.
I mean, I didn't know if it was a different variety that you're getting to grow the oil than it is for the fiber, or if it just hemp.
Grain and fiber is typically gonna be different varieties and
Right.
specialized to grain and fiber production, and the production system is different, and I think Larry probably will touch on that a little bit, but
So
yeah,
of
so
the
those
40
are
people
different.
that failed, were they more CB oil people or more?
Yes, they were more CBD.
Okay.
That was strictly covering the statistic for CBD, correct?
Yeah, the majority of what we took was
That one-
CBD,
I wanna do
and I don't know what the rate between CBD samples versus non-CBD
Right.
samples is. But we did put more of an emphasis on CBD because it's more likely to go over.
Right, it's not a.
Yep. I'm gonna take one more. Somebody, you had a question on your hand was up.
What soil and weather conditions will produce the higher THC content?
So Larry will talk about this also. That's a great question, and I don't think we fully understand that. I think what Larry would tell you, and he'll jump in if I'm wrong, you will see it's almost a stress response on the part of the plant in some instances that will make THC increase. And I think they see that in dry conditions, and they also see that in conditions of excessive wetness. And there's also, as I said, not a lot of consistency, and I don't think we can really say we understand what's going on there on the THC going on. So
Some people would claim they do.
yes, not me.
Not me.
So thank you very much. I will be here, and pay good attention to Larry and the Rogers here from the farm, because they're the folks with the real experience of growing this and understanding what it means to get into this. So I appreciate your attention.
So while we've got a break, there are a few seats over in here. If you want to jump in and grab a seat, by all means. Okay. Welcome. My name is Larry Smart. I'm a professor of horticulture in the School of Integrated Plant Science at Cornell. I'm also the associate director of Cornell Agritech, which is our campus based in Geneva, New York. I want to thank Chris and thank him for putting in all those pretty pictures. Really kicked it up a notch today. So, first of all, I'd like to get a feeling for the audience here. So, how many of you are licensed hemp growers? Okay. Yeah, got a couple here. Any licensed hemp processors? Okay. So if you're a grower and you're looking for a processor, there are a couple of processors in the room. So we always like to try to make those connections at these meetings. How many of you are potentially interested in applying to be a hemp grower? Okay, most of you probably. Any members of the press? No? Okay. Any members of law enforcement? No. Okay. Good. A couple of slides I might not have shown otherwise. So one of the key questions here is, what is the difference between hemp and marijuana? And we can think about it in terms of the application. So hemp has been bred by plant breeders over the last several decades to produce grain and fiber, and over the last decade to also produce CBD. Whereas marijuana has been bred by breeders, mostly in basements or garages, to produce high amounts of THC. Okay, so that's one difference. There is a legal difference, and that's, as Chris mentioned, the amount of THC. So hemp is defined legally in the statutes as having less than 0.3% THC. If you go above that, even the same plant sitting next to another plant in the field, if it goes above 0.3% THC, we now call it marijuana legally. Marijuana and hemp have been interbred over decades, so that genetically they are a mixture. There's a mixture of hemp plants that have been bred for grain and fiber, mixed with plants that have been bred for marijuana. And that breeding has been done, again, not necessarily by university or corporate breeders all the time. So the products of that breeding is not always uniform and stable, which are two of our three definitions of a cultivar. So you need to be careful about that. And remember also that we're working in an environment where Chris has a certain amount of regulatory authority within the state, but that's overlaid by the umbrella of federal authority that we always need to keep in mind, that marijuana is federally illegal, even if it becomes legal within the state, because we are now debating a cannabis law, and that would take another 3 hours to discuss that today. It is still federally illegal. Okay. I started working on hemp in early 2017. So I don't consider myself an expert. I've only been doing this for less than 2 years now. And when I started, we looked at these market analyses and said, oh, there's some really good, interesting applications of hemp fiber. This is a picture from a company called Sunstrand in Louisville, Kentucky, that has produced a hemp fiber-based insulation that could replace fiberglass insulation. I think we could all agree that that would be a great thing if our farmers could produce this substance that could replace somewhat toxic fiberglass, right? If you go to Patagonia, you have a choice of a lot of lines of hemp-based clothing, including some nice field coats here. That hemp fiber is entirely grown in China. There are big markets for personal care products that incorporate hemp seed oil into lotions and soaps and lip balm and other things. All of that oil comes from Canada, as well as many of the food products. You may have had hemp hearts, and there are hemp protein products you can get now. And again, most of that grain is grown in Canada. Here's a product, a muesli mix that includes hemp that's sold by a company in Rochester. And probably seen that Genesee has just announced a new set of hemp beers that they're going to market. So there are a number of food products, and as we got into breeding here in early 2017 at Cornell, our main focus was on food and fiber and personal care products based on hemp seed oil. But what happened in 2018? There's been this huge explosion in interest in CBD, cannabidiol, which back in 2016 was about a $130 million market. Some companies or analysts are predicting that that market will be $2 billion by 2020. Others have said $20 billion by 2020. So it's exploding right now. Why is that? Because, well, so there's another question. How many of you are using CBD on a regular basis? A few of you.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm kind of dumb here. What is CBD oil anyway?
Yeah,
Explain that.
I'll get to that in the middle of my talk, but cannabidiol is a compound that's made in the same biochemical pathway as THC. So it's very closely related. They have a common precursor. So in the plant, that's one of the differences between hemp and marijuana. Hemp plants have the enzymes to make CBD. Marijuana, that biochemical switch has been turned to make THC. Unfortunately, that switch can be switched based on stress and other things. And they have different pharmacological activity in our body. THC has a psychoactive effect. It binds to a particular receptor that induces that. CBD binds to a different receptor, or many different receptors, and it is now, there are good human clinical trials that it has strong effects in reducing seizures related to childhood epilepsy. So CBD is now registered as a prescription medicine by the FDA under the product Epidiolex to treat Dravet syndrome. So children who suffer from Dravet syndrome may have had 30 seizures a day. And by taking CBD, they can reduce that to 1 or 2 seizures a day. So it has been proven to have dramatic medical effects for seizures related to epilepsy. But many people are taking it for other symptoms. Arthritis, other chronic pains, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease. There's good animal trial evidence that it reduces anxiety and helps you sleep. So that's some of the anecdotal evidence. It's been very difficult to do human clinical trials, though, because it's been a Schedule I controlled substance, which involves a lot of paperwork with the DEA. Any other quick questions about CBD? Okay. I seem to have lost my clicker. Okay. So related to the different market classes that hemp has been bred for, it can be grown in many different settings. So for grain or for fiber, it's grown in a field crop setting, very dense stands planted with cereal grain drill, harvested with either a combine or sickle bar mower for grain or fiber. But for CBD, it's often grown in a horticultural setting, either in a greenhouse, in controlled environment, indoors, or much like tomato or other vegetable system with raised beds with plastic and trickle irrigation. Even being grown for baby greens. So it's a very versatile crop. We can grow it in a number of different ways with different costs of input. So that's an important thing to consider. The cost of input of planting a grain crop like that with a cereal grain drill, with a seed cost of about $3 to $4 a pound at 25 pounds to the acre, or in a horticultural setting with feminized plants, and I'll get to that in a second, that may cost $1 per seed with $20,000 to $25,000 per acre input. So when you hear about the value of the crop, you also need to consider the cost and inputs involved in producing the crop. We don't have that fully modeled yet. So the other thing about cannabis is it is dioecious. There are male plants and female plants. So when we're producing for grain, we need those male plants to pollinate the female plants to make seeds, right? So you typically have a mixture, and the brown plants here are the male plants that are senescing. They senesce early, they die back early, and the female plants are starting to make seeds here. Now there's a variant in that sex control system that produces plants that have both male and female flowers on them. That's a hermaphrodite or a monoecious plant in botanical terms. So that plant can self-pollinate itself. And many of our best grain varieties are of this type, they're monoecious. But for CBD or THC, if you pollinate that female plant, it's the female plant that produces trichomes that produce those compounds. If you pollinate those female plants, the levels go down 2 to 3-fold. And there's your profit going down. So you need to maintain, to get the highest concentration of CBD or THC, unpollinated female plants, which means somehow eliminating 50% of the population in a normal seed population, right? And making sure that you don't have any of these wacky hermaphroditic plants, okay? So those are the typical production practices intimately related to the sex of this dioecious plant. Okay, questions about that? Yeah.
If you're growing for fiber, fiber.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter. I mean, does it matter if you get the hermaphs in there and stuff like that? Because you're strictly just growing it for fiber anyway.
Right.
The seed being in there, that should not affect. I understand what you're saying about the CBD and the THC level and all that stuff. They're dropping because the seeds are taking out the THC pods.
Yeah.
So that doesn't matter for fiber then, pretty much.
Yep, so the question is, if you're growing for fiber, do you even care about the sex of the plant or whether it gets pollinated? In fact, you want to harvest before or right at the onset of flowering, because when the plants start to senesce like this, the quality of the fiber starts to go down.
Okay.
So you're actually, for fiber, going to harvest much earlier than any of these others to try to get nice green stems.
Yes. Okay. That makes sense, sir.
Okay. So Cornell, as Chris described, took up the challenge of helping to support this new industry in New York State in late 2016, early 2017. These are the main activities that we've undertaken. And this is one of my main interests, is to evaluate hemp cultivars that have been bred elsewhere and how they're going to grow in New York State. Identify interest among growers. I think we can see there's a lot of interest. But we also need to have processors and connect growers with processors to ensure we have stable supply chains. We've been working on modeling the cost of production, and we have a report on cost of production on our website for grain, fiber, and dual-purpose harvest. And we're starting to work on a model of cost of production for CBD. And we've been out educating growers and processors together with Cornell Cooperative Extension. So that's why I'm here. We've also been working with seed companies to establish local seed production. That's a little bit out of date now because with the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill, there should not be any restrictions on moving seed across state lines. But we'd still like to have we do have some very good seed producers in New York State. We'd like them to take up this challenge of producing hemp seed. I'm a plant breeder, and we are establishing the first public university hemp breeding program in the country here at Cornell, with support from New York State. We have a pretty large and diverse team of researchers studying hemp. So if you have questions about diseases, or seed quality, or pests, insect pests, we have people now studying hemp who can support your concerns about pest diseases and seed quality. Our greenhouse expert is working on hemp. We have a plant biochemist working on cannabinoids. We're working on tissue culture and transformation of hemp, in addition to our breeding program. And we have a team of cooperative extension educators across the state who we talk with every 2 weeks, who are out on the ground to help you on your farms. Okay, so the research we've been doing over the last 2 years is primarily to evaluate hemp cultivars in small plot trials. And I'm going to use these to demonstrate the production methods for grain and fiber. And then we also did a CBD trial in 2018. So 4-foot by 20-foot plots, planting with a 6-row cone seeder. In production, you would plant with a serial grain drill. It's pretty specific as to depth of planting and soil conditions. It has a strong requirement for good seed to soil contact. It does not tolerate wet soils or flooding at all. It's a little bit fairly drought tolerant once it gets established, but it is a very finicky crop to establish in the field. And in these trials, we're looking at stand density and time of flowering, surveying for pests and diseases, and then harvesting the grain and fiber and characterizing yield of these different cultivars. Okay, so if you get a well-established stand, it sort of peters along for about 3 weeks, and then it will just take off. So at 7 weeks, here's our stand 5 to 6 feet tall in 2017. And then we're going to harvest it after about 90 to 100 days, typically. We're using a small plot combine, but again, for grain, there are a number of brands of combines that work very well for harvesting hemp. There are a number of designs of combines that do not work well for hemp. And that information is pretty well established by the Canadians, who last year grew about 150,000 acres of hemp. So they've worked it out pretty well, and we rely a lot on them for that information, the modifications that you need to make to your combine to make sure that rotating shafts don't get wrapped up with this stuff that we make rope out of. Okay? So in 2017, we trialed 13 well-established grain and dual-purpose cultivars bred in Canada and Europe for the most part. And based on our 2018 results as well, these top 4 I can pretty much suggest are going to do well under New York conditions. And we work with these seed companies to continue to evaluate new cultivars as they produce them. One of the advantages of hemp is it produces a lot of oil. So you can press the hemp grain to get hemp seed oil. about 36% oil by weight of the grain. And it has a very healthy mix of omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids. So if you're looking to transition from an animal-based to a plant-based diet, it's a very good replacement for fish oil. It is not a good cooking oil because it has a very low smoking temperature. It's very good for salad dressings and pestos and other applications like that. And again, works very well in lotions and soaps. It goes into your skin very well. It's also a very good wood preservative. So it makes a good deck stain. It also has a high amount of protein. So you press for that oil, and then you get a press cake that comes out of the oil press. That's about 50% protein. Again, the starting composition is somewhere between 25 and 27% protein. So again, as we're transitioning from animal-based diets, a lot of people are looking for plant-based meats. We think that hemp will make a very good protein source for those plant-based meats, high protein exercise drinks, other protein smoothies. It's all about trying to get more protein in our diets these days, right? And a lot of it, we want to be plant-based, gluten-free, soy-free, right now GMO-free. Okay? Question?
Does that oil have CBD in it as well?
No.
No, zero.
Nope. The CBD is only made in the trichomes of the leaf material in the female flowers. So it's not. There's very little CBD in the grain itself. Okay, in 2018 we continued trials with even more cultivars, and we took advantage of more of the Cornell farms that we have. So we planted a trial down in Long Island and one up near the Canadian border at our Chazy Dairy Research Center up there, as well as trials on the Ithaca campus and at Cornell Agritech in Geneva. So we're covering a pretty wide latitudinal range from north to south in New York State, and we'll replicate that again this coming year. And I'll say that the first year we were pretty lucky. We had good growing conditions. We got good yields. The top cultivar in the top trial in 2017 produced 2,400 pounds of clean grain per acre. The average in Canada is 800 pounds per acre. Okay, so I think we have good potential to get high yields of grain in New York State just with existing cultivars that were bred in Europe and Canada. And as we develop cultivars adapted for New York conditions, those yields should even improve. 2018, not a great growing season for anything. We had, right after we planted, had about 6 weeks with no rain. The hemp just sat there, about that tall. And in that time, the weeds came in, and many of those cultivars were overcome by weeds. There are no herbicides or pesticides that are registered for hemp because it's been federally illegal here, right? So in a field crop setting, when the weeds come in, you really don't have much alternative. And we lost a lot of our plots to weeds last season. And then we got heavy rain, right? In late August and September, deluges of rain. Hemp does not tolerate flooding. If it's sitting in standing water for 3 days, it will die. So you have to have prime, well-drained, loamy soils, and you have to be lucky with your rain fall through the season. So in these grain trials, you see our yields are down to a top of about 850 pounds per acre this year, because some of these plots really failed pretty poorly. And in the dual purpose grain and fiber trials, we did a little bit, well, maybe a little bit better, not much better at all, actually, I'll say. So average yields at our best site, only about 650 pounds to the acre. So that reflects sort of the average yields that we see in Canada. We did some larger fields that were combine harvested with a John Deere 9600, unmodified. That went through it pretty well, but it was only 3 acres. He hadn't wrapped up any of his shafts, and even after just 3 acres, you're starting to see that fiber wrap up around his shafts and moving parts. and it will get into the bearings. And if that fiber gets into the bearings and then dries out, there's almost no way to get it out. You've got to burn it out with a torch.
So if you use that machine for grain,
Yep, you're just using a regular.
use for fiber, you still use the same machine, or you can use sickle bar, like you're saying,
Yep.
just level.
So for fiber, you're going to sickle bar mow it,
Then it has to be hand picked and thrown up on a wagon or something like that.
and then you would then it has to ret in the field. I'll show you some pictures of that. You're going to turn it
Yep,
probably a
yep,
couple of times,
Yep.
and then bale it with a large round baler.
Rounds bale, okay, so
Yep.
like how you get here. Okay.
Yep. See that we did better in this field. This field, I think you could probably use square bales, but you're taking long stems, and the round baler tends to wrap those better. They don't tend to go through the large square bale as well when you got these long stems.
Is there a problem with the round baler getting messed up like that machine or not really?
There are problems.
It does have any problems, period.
There's gonna be
Gotcha.
problems.
It's sapping strong, it's rolling, I get it.
Yep.
Okay.
So this field got a little bit better established. This is again one of our top cultivars that's again only 2 years of data, right? But so far Anka has been performing pretty consistently and pretty well. And in this field, we planted it a little bit later, so it got rainfall a little bit earlier than our other fields, and we got about 1,300 pounds to the acre. So the planting date is optimally mid to late May. When the soil, basically, as soon as the soil is warm enough, about 55 degrees. So you want to get it in before the middle of June. It's a very day-length sensitive crop, so you need to be sensitive to day length. And latitude will affect the growth of the crop based on different day length at different latitudes.
Would the ideal land be flat, or would it be more hill?
So the question is flat land or not?
Yeah.
And that's one of the advantages in Canada, is it's pancake flat out there, so they can drive these big, huge combines and big, huge planters, and that's where they get efficiency in their system. I mean, like with any of our field crops, the bigger the flatter, the easier it is to get big equipment in there and to get cost efficiencies because of that.
About late frost.
Late frost in the spring, that's a good question. We don't have a whole lot of experience with that. If it's wet, early wet spring soils is a problem, but it seems to be fairly tolerant to frost. So again, in Canada, they experience those early frosts pretty frequently, and it seems to tolerate that pretty well.
What's the biggest field growing? I mean, I'm sure you've dealt with people that are already cultivating, I mean, cultivators that are doing, I mean, what's the biggest plots that these people, like you did a 2.6 acre
Yep.
plot here? Like, is that like one of the bigger ones that you do,
So-
2.6 acres?
So the question is about field size for us. This is about as big as we can handle. But in New York State, 2017, we had 200-acre fields that were planted.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so for fiber, again, you're gonna harvest those plants before they go to seed. In 2017, we had an average height of about 8 feet. That was because we planted a little bit late. The fiber should be 10 to as tall as 12 feet tall. You're going to cut it with a sickle bar mower, so you get a nice, even, those stems drop nice and evenly parallel in the field, and then use a rotary rake to turn it a couple of times because it has to ret. That's a Dutch word for rotting. It has to rot in the field. The leaves are going to drop off, and through the action of microbes, you're going to separate the high-quality fiber, which is on the outside of the stem, from the woody core, which they call the hurd. So the long fibers are in the bast, which is on the outside. That's what we make yarn and rope out of. And then the woody hurd in the middle can get chopped up. People are using that for animal bedding. Actually, there's a company that you can go to Walmart and buy a 3-pound bag of lining for your gerbil cage made out of chopped up hemp hurd. And that's what's used for hempcrete as well.
Where's the closest processor?
So the question is about processors. Ag and Markets has the list of licensed processors on their website. So you can download that and contact those folks. There is a company that just opened in Minnesota called CNY Hemp Processing. So that's probably your closest hemp fiber processor.
Fiber and Canistota?
Yep.
That's sold to the
Steve-
processor by the pound?
Steve Halton,
Yeah, that sounds right.
Steve Halton.
Correct.
Is that sold, like, when the cultivator sells to the processor, for the fiber? Is it sold by the pound?
Yeah, so the question is, how would you market this?
Yes.
How does it, when does it become a commodity? That's one thing we need this to be, right? So, so when can you get a price like we get for a bushel of corn, right, or a bushel of soybeans?
Yeah.
Typically, hemp is sold by the pound, not by the bushel, but yeah, we need to get to that point where our grain elevators are taking hemp, or we have certain grain elevators that are taking hemp as if it's a commodity like corn or soybeans. For now, when you're planting, I would recommend that you have a contract with a buyer.
Okay.
And that contract needs to accommodate for seed cleaning. You need to get it, for drying, you need to get it into a dryer within 4 hours. It will start to heat up in the bin of the combine by the time you get off the field, because it's got all this leaf material in it, right? You're not waiting for the grain to dry down like you would for corn. It's green, it's got all this leafy material in it, so it starts to heat up and compost right away and start to mold right away. So you got to get it into the dryer, not very hot though, because you'll compromise the quality of the oil if you heat it up within 4 hours. And then you got to clean it and condition it. So those are the things, and then you got to store it under the right conditions. So you want to have all those logistics worked out.
Can you reuse those seeds to plant for the following?
So that's an excellent question. Can you save seed and replant it? So that depends on your source of seed. All of the grain companies right now will require you to sign a material transfer agreement when you buy that seed, which says you will not save it and replant it.
Hemp will keep growing back year after year.
Hemp will shatter and it will drop to the ground, and you'll get volunteer hemp coming back up. These companies will require you to kill those plants. You cannot allow it to grow in year 2.
Because I know a few people where it's been growing for 20 years or longer. And they had that big bust a couple years ago, and they said they had 10,000 plants of pot. It was probably cannabis that grew over, but when they say it was pot, it justifies the cost of the helicopter. Nobody can take care of 10,000 plants.
So we do know of some wild populations. We call them feral populations. In the Midwest, it's called ditchweed. So the peak of hemp cultivation in this country was during World War II, when the laws were sort of put on hold because we needed hemp for victory, right? We grew, 120,000 acres of hemp in 1944 in the Midwest for rope, for the Navy. And that hemp spread and reseeded itself. It's very hard to eradicate once it gets established in the ditches. And ditchweed, wild hemp from those days, this is a fiber variety, very low THC, is still quite common in Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Indiana, Illinois. It's everywhere. We had very little wild hemp in New York State. So far, we found 3 populations. And we find them from the news reports. And I'll tell you, there is one population we found very close to this spot. So let me move on. I need to press on. Quick question.
As far as what you were saying about not being able to replant the seeds, is it possible you can do crossbreeding and create your own genetics with different
So again, it depends on how you obtain the seed.
Okay.
And again, these days, everyone who sells decent seed will ask you to sign a material transfer agreement preventing you from doing any breeding, any clonal propagation, anything. So it's up to you to honor the terms of that material transfer agreement. Now, if you get seed from some other source, there's nothing, the state has not regulated your ability to breed and produce a new cultivar from that. Let me say that I showed you those monoecious cultivars. There is a certain amount of work you need to do to remove all the male plants as you're producing seed for planting to maintain that monoecious trait. So it's not always straightforward that you can produce high quality seed yourself. Right? It's a pretty sophisticated process. That's why we need our good seed producers doing that. So here are retted straw yields. So after the straw has been in the field for 2 to 3 weeks, it's been retted, then we weighed it, and we're getting about, on average on our best sites, about 5 tons of retted straw per acre. That's about 20% high quality bast fiber. So we're getting about 1 ton per acre of high quality long fiber. Okay? I'm going to speed up here a little bit. So the third market class is for CBD. And we planted 2 trials, one in Ithaca, one in Geneva this year with 15 entries. This is one of our commercial fields in New York State. So that's what it looks like in a commercial setting. We established seeds in the greenhouse because we wanted to remove males. We didn't have feminized seed. And we let them grow much taller than we should have. You typically would transplant them when they're about 6 inches tall into raised beds with plastic mulch and trickle irrigation. So these are the cultivars that I grew if you're interested in CBD. A couple of these are commercially available, but many of them were from breeders, so they're, I'll call them pre-commercial lines. One from a breeder in Las Vegas, one from a breeder in Oregon, and these are some of the common lines that you might be able to get your hands on. So hemp is a very finicky plant. I mean, how many times can I say that? We got a rain event in one of our fields in Geneva that dumped 3.5 or 4 inches of rain. There was a wet spot in the middle of the field where we had standing water. Basically the rest of the season, those plants crashed almost instantly. I saw this in commercial fields as well. Some people were okay with the raised beds if they stayed dry, but a lot of people lost plants because of flooding. And when it's flooded, you can't fertigate, right? You can't add, that was our plan, we're going to fertigate, put fertilizer through our drip irrigation, but the field was so wet we didn't want to irrigate, so then our plants became nitrogen starved through the season. This is how the regulators are going to come and test. They're going to take the top 20 centimeters or so of your plants, pull 10 or 20 plants from the field, and in New York State, we grind up all that material. So it includes the stems and any seeds if they're in there. That tends to dilute down the THC or CBD, right? In other states, they will pluck out the seeds and stems and only test the leafy material. So New York is rather lenient in its testing standards compared to Kentucky, for example. We hung those plants, chopped them with loppers, hung them in the greenhouse. Roger's going to talk about how fun that is. And then stripped it by hand. And there are some machines now. People are creative and are developing machinery for stripping that, but we just did it by hand to get that leafy material. And maybe you can see some of the trichomes here. That's what you're going for, is the trichome material on the leafy floral matter. So we're going for CBD. CBD is made from CBDA. It takes heat to convert CBDA to CBD. And when you buy a CBD product in the store, that manufacturer would have heated their samples to make sure that all the CBDA, which has no activity or maybe a different activity, is converted to CBD. It's the same with THC. THC is made from THCA. It takes heat to convert THCA to THC. This is not psychoactive. You need to get the THC to be the psychoactive compound. I say all this because up till now, New York State has only been testing Delta-9 THC, considering that at the 0.3 level. But with the 2018 Farm Bill, we're considering the total potential THC which means you need to add up the sum of THCA and THC together. Okay? That's why Chris says, under our 2018 standards, everyone except me was compliant. I had the only hot sample. But if you add up the sum of THCA and THC, many of those samples would not have been compliant. Okay? Let me just say, there are other cannabinoids. There are 120 other cannabinoids. Many of those also have pharmacological activity. So the industry overall is very interested in CBC, CBG, and some of the other cannabinoids, which are present in very low concentrations. But through breeding, you might be able to develop cultivars that have higher levels of these other cannabinoids, and maybe better, for example, anxiety or sleep or chronic pain. Okay, so this was the analysis of our cannabinoids in our CBD trial. See, our best ones were making about 8% CBD. If we were to have sold that product, it probably would have been priced based on the percent CBD in dried flower material per pound. On average, $3 to $4 per percent CBD per pound. So just for ease of math, if I'd had a 10% CBD harvest, $4 per pound, you're going to get about $40 per pound for that. Okay? You see, some of this was not stable breeding material. Some of it was getting close to the 0.3% delta 9 THC. We also looked at our grain and fiber cultivars. Some of that was pre-commercial breeding material, and some of those got close to the 0.3% delta 9 THC. Interesting thing is that some of that material, even that it's producing a decent amount of grain, can also produce some CBD. So that whole horticultural model of growing female plants to produce very high amounts of CBD, one of my hopes is to produce a field crop that we can harvest with a combine, get 3 to 4 to 5% CBD, and a grain crop at the same time, and maybe even a fiber crop too. Okay? Okay, here's the problem. Again, there's no law enforcement in the room, right? So if we had added in the THCA, one of our samples was at 2%. That's marijuana. It's not going to get you high, but federally, it's marijuana. And many of those other samples were close to 1%.
0.3, I'm sorry.
0.3%.
Okay, right.
That's the threshold, that dotted line right there.
Gotcha, sir.
So these were all hot, and that's why one of my samples at Ag and Markets came back hot. Even some of the grain and fiber cultivars are up around 0.7%. They're not stable tested cultivars. So beware. Buyer beware of your seed source.
Question about the seed source. Most of the seeds that you use, did you get them internationally or were they
Yeah, so the question, it is a big question. The biggest question is seed sources right now. For grain and fiber, the best fiber cultivars are coming from Italy right now. They're distributed by Andrea Schiavi, who's based in Kentucky. He has the import rights for those Italian fiber cultivars.
What's his name?
Schiavi. Andrea Schiavi, Schiavi Seeds. The best grain cultivars are coming from Canada or Europe right now. There are some American cultivars, but they haven't performed up to the European and Canadian ones. Okay, let me press on. Again, these have different concentrations of some of those minor cannabinoids. So if you're interested in CBG or CBC, in our breeding program, we're interested in that as well. And we're going to see if we can produce new cultivars that have different combinations of those other cannabinoids.
Do you ask them, like, tell them you live in central New York or whatever, do they have like different seeds for different areas?
So you're asking, do we have cultivars that are adapted regionally?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
So that's
So-
why if you do get seeds of your own, would be better because now it's adapted to the soil we have.
Exactly. So the cultivars for CBD have been bred in Colorado or Oregon.
With higher elevation, way different than there.
Colorado, it doesn't rain there, or it rains very little.
But the state of Washington rains every day.
In western Oregon, again, very good growing conditions there. So very different growing conditions, as you said, than what we have here. So we definitely need regionally bred and selected.
So you tell them where you want it.
Yeah. Okay, so I told you we might get 8 to 10% CBD in our harvest. We're getting, on average, we got about 1 pound of flower dry weight per plant. We were planting 6 row on center rows. We planted about 3 feet apart within the row. People are working out their optimum planting density, but let's say about 1,200 to 1,400 plants per acre at that spacing. So you're gonna get about 1,200 to 1,400 pounds per acre at $40 per pound, so you can do the math. Okay, it's a pretty lucrative crop. I was just in Colorado the past few days, visited a farm that had a 3.5 acre field. He got 4 pounds per plant. It was a $1.2 million field. 3 acres.
3 acres?
Worth $1.2 million.
What state is that?
Colorado. Question?
Was he planting that at square yard or square meter? Do you know, or what the spacing was on those plants?
That spacing, I think, I just saw the rows in the field was probably 6 foot by 3 foot spacing.
Are they getting
Okay.
much higher, are they getting much higher CBD percentages out there as well as being
So this was a very skilled grower in an optimal climate with very good soils, and he was probably getting 16 to 18% CBD.
Yeah. And big plants.
$100 per plant. Okay.
How'd you get that math?
I'm sorry, what?
Was it 1 pound of dry flower, 1 pound of flowers per plant, and you had 1,400 plants?
Our spacing, I didn't show you per acre yields. I showed you per plant.
1,400 plants per acre.
On average, most of the
You
growers,
had one pound of flower per plant.
Yep.
That's 1,400 pounds of flower per plant.
per acre.
Per acre, 1,400 pounds times $40 a pound doesn't come out to 2 million.
It doesn't. That was my yield.
56,000.
That was my yield. This grower in Colorado was producing 4 pounds per plant
4 pounds per plant.
Yeah, but also.
And got
8%
paid.
CBD.
and got paid $100 per, I think $100 per plant. No, it should have been more than that. I'm sorry, I'm not, having trouble doing the math in my head, but
No, that's fine.
that's the bottom line number he told me.
$1,400 an acre. 14,000, 140,000 an acre is $100 a plant. Actually, math is all zeros.
Well, in Colorado, smokable marijuana is legal.
That's right.
So, you can take out both.
I don't,
That would raise
no.
your.
Let's not get into that. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap things up. I've been answering questions as we go along, so hopefully I've answered most of your questions. In the future, we're gonna continue to evaluate cultivars. I'm getting my hands on some of the commercially available CBD lines right now. That is a challenge. So that we can test another 20 CBD cultivars in Geneva and Ithaca this year. We have some companies that are working towards producing certified seed in New York, some of the grain and fiber cultivars, and we're well on our way to establishing a New York State-based public breeding program to release cultivars adapted to New York conditions, as well as developing transformation systems. So couldn't have done any of this without the support from the governor's office and New York State Agri Markets. Chris and his team are great collaborators and partners with us. Here's our website, hemp.cals.cornell.edu. We have our trial results on there. We have photos that you can look at. We have links to other growers' guides, fact sheets that we produced, calendar of CCE events that we do throughout the year. Our field day will be August 13th, so put that on your calendar. Chris, put that on your calendar, please. Hopefully Chris can be there. In Geneva, August 13th.
You're gonna harvest and grow it.
We will show you, demonstrate to you all of our field trials that we have in Geneva, in addition to having speakers through the morning. Yep. And you can follow me on Twitter at Cornell Willow, or our hemp program Twitter feed is right here. Okay. Thank you. Questions?
I have a question. So my question is, are there any restrictions if you do grow industrial hemp? Is there any restrictions on anything else that you're growing on your property, or what else that you could do on your property? Say you have an event center.
Okay. The question is, if you grow industrial hemp, does that restrict you from doing anything else?
Other kind of crops.
So, for example, could you have a daycare on a hemp farm?
You might ask some questions.
So something like that
So
might.
like at events, like weddings. Say you're doing weddings on your
Oh,
property.
weddings.
No, I don't think that would disqualify at this point.
Okay, and growing anything else, like say you're also doing a large quantity of tomatoes.
Right. So we want to encourage hemp as a crop that's in rotation with the other crops on your farm. So,
Okay.
so at this point, I often get calls from non-farmers who say, I have 10 acres. I want to plant that to hemp. And I say, well, if you have 10 acres, that really means this year you have about 3 acres, right? Because you probably at the earliest want to rotate every 3 years. So you need to consider that. Hemp is a crop that you're going to put in rotation with all of the other crops on your farm.
What did you say the seeding rate was per pound, per acre? How many seeds you plant per acre?
For grain, it's typically 25 pounds to the acre. It's about 27,000 seeds per pound. For fiber, it's typically a higher density. We plant, I think the recommendation is about 50 pounds to the acre. So you want a really dense field to get them to grow nice and tall with no branching, a nice, tall, thin stem.
And you said that for CBCs, it's about 40 acres. For CB, for the fibers, if you're growing for stock, what is that, what people are getting per pound?
Yep, so
For the fiber.
the question is, what is the market value for fiber?
Yes,
I think
roughly, no, I think it's, that's
70 to 80 cents per pound, I want to say. I think for high quality redded straw, 70 to 80 cents per pound. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've got enough data to.
right.
This is my memory from trade.
Yeah.
And how much do they roughly get, if you do it right, you say everything, how much do you get off an acre?
I-
all-wise?
So again,
For
for fiber, we were getting, and we're not very
No, I
sophisticated.
get it.
These are small plots,
Yeah.
about 5 tons dry per acre.
10,000 pounds.
That's pretty good yield.
Larry, just to clarify.
Yep.
You still, even though it's for fiber, you still have to have 0.3% tested?
Yes. But you're testing the flower tops at the top, whether it's grain, fiber, or CBD. Yep. That's where the THC is going to be made.
Okay, Larry, I think we're gonna do one more question.
One more question.
I think I know the answer, but have the animal nutritionists shown any interest in substitute for slated?
Yep, so that's an excellent question. Hemp is by anecdotal evidence, a very good animal feed. Last year I heard a talk from a beef producer in Colorado who says that his meat quality improved tremendously. This was a Wagyu beef producer. His meat quality went up tremendously when he started incorporating hemp seed into the feed for his cattle. Right now, hemp is not listed on the generally recognized as safe list as a food additive or feed additive.
Unless it's dietary supplement.
This is different.
This is
We're
for
talking
animal
about
feed.
Animal feed.
Okay.
So there's a national organization
Okay.
that sets those standards.
Yep.
So the Colorado beef producers have gotten together and are paying for the animal feeding trials. I think it's about $300,000 minimum to do the studies to show that it is safe to feed. You would be feeding the press cake generally, press for oil, and then take that high protein press cake and use that as feed.
The one exception on the grass list for animal feed is whole seeds as poultry feed. I think that is
It's on?
acceptable. I
Okay.
think that's acceptable, but beyond that,
So
it's a research.
there's a very good study from Washington Department of Agriculture on the use of hemp as a poultry feed, and again, the improved quality, egg quality and meat quality, I think, using hemp seed as a chicken feed. So that is one of the things we hope to do nationally, and Cornell hopefully can contribute to some of that data for animal testing so that we get more markets for hemp. And the animal feed and pet food market are very big markets.
How about the absorbency of the fiber for bedding?
And fiber can be used for bedding. Again, it is being marketed.
Relatively, what's the relative absorbency compared to other straws?
Yeah, so the question is, has anyone tested the absorbency of hemp fiber compared to other potential beddings? I haven't seen those data done yet. We need to do that.
I see that when you showed that they're using the hemp also for the house, what's it called, the insulation, that doesn't catch fire.
I don't think it's,
I think it's got some fire retardant properties.
Yeah.
They may treat it for fire retardant, but I do think it has that quality actually. It's actually from a building materials perspective, it's really a pretty interesting area. And I would say, I think we would like to see a lot more people looking at that building materials, because I think it's got some potential merit there.
All right, guys, we're gonna have two growers come up, and talk. So, I'm gonna have Homestead have come up and talk. I'm gonna ask you to hold your questions because something that they might not touch base with in their presentation, our next grower might touch base on theirs, and then we'll have everyone come up for the final round of questions. All right? All right. The floor is yours, and I'll push the button.
Alright guys, hi, welcome. My name is Sarah Murphy and this is Iris Rogers. We are Homestead Hemp. We are growing hemp for CBD. This past year was our first year. We grew about 5 acres. We're really here just to give you a run through of what our year looked like on the ground and how everything went.
I'm not as I'm going to be reading from my phone because presentations are not always my thing. So, this is our logo that we started out. This is actually our barn, 1787. That's on our property. If you would go to the next slide. We're going to start off a little bit just educating a little bit about our family history. We're an 8th generation farm, and we were originally a dairy farm that we ended up closing down in the 70s due to different regulations and high demand, us not being able to meet that. So the farm has pretty much been inactive since that point. It's been very expensive to keep afloat. It's been going on corn and hay since then, just so we can get our taxes deductions. But it's mainly been a private farm without a specific purpose for a really long time. And that's when Sarah, my sister, was in Colorado. She was living there last year, and she was working on marijuana, was it?
It was hemp with high CBD.
Hemp CBD facility, and somebody said to her, they just opened up a pilot program for CBD in New York, and that's where she got the idea. Well, we've had a farm that's been quite inactive for a while. We're trying to keep it in the family. Obviously, we've had it. Only Rogers have ever owned it, and we want to keep it that way. And that's kind of how we got the ball rolling on this. So there's our farm there, and that's at it current today. And so then from that point on, Sarah went on to apply for the program and got me on board. And you can talk about that a little bit if you want.
Yeah, and also we're located in Hebron, New York. It's near Saratoga Springs on the Vermont border. That sort of area, Greenwich, Cambridge area. But yeah, so I applied to the Industrial Hemp Pilot Program. I provided a research proposal and filled out the application in full. And we just really wanted to see if this was going to be a good opportunity to provide our farm with something that could be sustainable, could reopen, and we could sustain it year to year. So when we were accepted to the program, we were very excited. Originally we decided that we wanted to start next season, so 2019, this summer. However, we met a consulting group, Castetter Sustainability Group, who agreed to help us start this past summer. So we got everything together, although we had a very small budget. We decided that we would do 5 acres of industrial hemp specifically for CBD. We worked with CSG to produce that this year.
So, yeah, next slide. So at the very start, here's our land over here, all the way on your right. That was our 5 acres that previously it's had corn and hay. In the past couple years, recently, it's just had hay, and I want to stress that because if you've had fields that have had corn on them, then those fields need time before you put hemp on them. I forget, where's Larry? There's a specific disease that they can, hemp plants can acquire after being planted in, do you remember what I'm talking about? No? No. I don't remember the name. But yes, there's a specific how your plants can be affected. So this worked out in our favor because we had transitioned from corn to hay, and hay had been planted and had just been like kind of pretty much clean field for a couple years. These are the seeds, and that leads me to our biggest pest problem that we experienced right from the start was actually in the greenhouse. It was chipmunks and birds and squirrels getting the seeds. It was not deer or anything else in the field. It was in the greenhouse. Like critters can smell those seeds from miles away, and we actually we lost quite a bit of seeds just because of that. Even though we set traps and we were killing little critters constantly, we couldn't keep up. They were stealing seeds left and right. So right at the beginning, this was our biggest pest problem for sure.
So as you can see right out in this field, originally we were thinking that we would have to plant them directly into the ground. We knew with the research and data that has been taken in previous years across several states that probably was not the best option. However, we had such a limited budget, there was no other, we didn't have a greenhouse at that time. So up until 24 hours before we wanted to plant them, we were going to put them right in the ground. We were lucky enough to have a friend offer to allow us to use their greenhouse so that we could first grow them in germination trays and then transplant them into the ground at a later time. So very quickly we stopped all our planning, everything that we were going to do, and we switched over to this new plan. And actually I will say that's a common theme for our year is make a plan, try to stick to it, and then have something happen and do something completely different.
Yeah, it was a very fly by the seat of your pants year, and you should keep that in mind if you are growing because there's things that are constantly changing and adapting with, with this process that you could go to do something and then somebody might tell you, oh, you actually can't do that. So we had grown our seedlings in the greenhouse, in our friend's greenhouse, and we had somebody from the state come by and actually tell us, like, no, you're not allowed to do that, even though we let them know where they were and who it was. Apparently it didn't get to the right person, and she was like, nope, they can't, you're not allowed to do that. You need to get all your plants back here and put them on the ground. They need to stay on the property. So there's a lot of rolling with the punches and reading through everything and keeping up to date on what you are, where the plants are allowed to be, where they're not supposed to be, who's allowed to be touching them, who can be around them. It's a lot of information. So yeah, 24 hours, we changed our entire plan. And at this point, we also had been working on a fundraiser. I think that's the next slide, if you would go to the next one. Here we are doing it in the greenhouse. But at this time, we were also working on a fundraiser. We had no means, now that we had them in the greenhouse, we had no way of getting them actually into the ground besides doing it by hand because we didn't have a budget for anything else. So we actually started a GoFundMe campaign, which if you don't know what that is, it's a fundraising campaign that you can do online, and we called it Foster a Hemp Plant. and we needed a piece of equipment. We were specifically thinking a water wheel, which is, if you don't know, a transplanting machine that will put the pods into the ground. And that sped up the process for us greatly and helped so we didn't have to do it completely by hand. So foster a hemp plant, we had our friends and family and we advertised all over, basically spread the word that for a summer you could foster one of the plants, you could name it whatever you wanted, and throughout the summer we would post photos of the plant and detail its growth and how it was doing, and in exchange for a small donation. And because of that, we were able to buy our first piece of equipment, which was the water wheel, which definitely saved our backs.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh, well, we got the water wheel used. I think it was around
About $1,200.
$1,200. Okay, $1,200. So we got that used. There's a lot of good used equipment out there. Plenty of farms, you know, getting rid of older stuff. So we got that from a friend who was looking to get rid of some equipment. So that's how we paid for our first piece, and that's how we got it in the ground. Here they are, us planting, and they took not too long to pop up there. You see on the right.
No, and a little bit about in the greenhouse. You can see right here, we have black paper on top of them. We wanted to keep them warm and damp, but we didn't want to keep them particularly wet. So that was kind of our method until they got to a point where, you know, we didn't need to put that on anymore. But that was kind of our method, water them every day, check on growth rates, and put this paper on, and there was wet newspaper as a layer underneath that as well. And then also create very elaborate, like little fences to try to keep out birds and pests. Yeah.
And next slide, please. Oh, you might have to click it a couple times. Here they are. This is us doing, one more time. This is us doing the data for it. So for our, the New York State pilot program, we had to record all our data. So we were constantly taking measurements and detailing the amount of water that they got, what nutrients were added, etc. So it started right away as soon as they started growing. We also, having the Foster a Hemp Plant program helped because we had specific names for specific plants that we were studying right from seed until harvest time. So we had about 25 plants that we were watching very specifically to see where they were in the greenhouse, then where they got transferred to in the field, and how that affected them, and you know, which ones grew better than others. I think our largest one was Veronica. It was around 9 feet tall. But we also had some that actually just didn't make it. They did fine in the greenhouse, and then they either had transplant shock or standing water, or we had 6 weeks of no rain and they got fried. So some of our foster plants didn't make it, but other ones did very, very well. So that's what we're doing here, and you can see the popsicle sticks where all of them are numbered and named. Next slide.
So here we are transplanting. You can see Iris right here on the side. This hooks to the back of a tractor. It has two water tanks. And what is happening is the water is going into this wheel in the middle, in between the two trays. And the wheel has several divots. The water goes into the divot so that when it goes into the ground, it creates a little hole in the ground, and then it puts a little bit of water into it. And what Iris is doing is taking the plug out and then putting it right into that hole. Our wheel had a divot every 3 feet. We decided that we would plant every other hole so that each plant in the row was 6 feet apart, and then each row was 5 feet apart. We felt it was very important to give plants this particular type of industrial hemp with CBD as much space as we can, because the more space it has, the more ability it has to widen and grow and create the flower and everything that we would want for CBD.
Yeah, it's really important to give it that space too because of airflow. The branches and all the plants need a lot of heavy airflow throughout to keep them comfortable, and also later in the season to help them not mold. They get CBD, plants specifically, will get not like maybe 5-year green, which are long and skinny. CBD are really fat and bushy like Christmas trees, And if you don't give them enough space too, they're a competitive plant and they will try to beat out each other, using all their resources to destroy the plant nearest to them. So you do want to make sure you give them, if you're going for CBD, lots and lots of space. You can see here our transplants were a little small for when we planted them. They could have used maybe a few more weeks in the greenhouse. And as it was, this was our first batch, and our second batch actually did a lot better because they did have more time. So I think these had I think about 4 weeks, and I think they could have used a little bit, maybe 6 weeks, a little bit longer than that. They, like Larry said, they should be, a little bit taller, and ours were about this big. So the first batch we did have a lot that fried or just didn't make it. So.
Are you cleaning through plastic or no?
We didn't this year, no, and we took care of the weeds. You'll see as the pictures go on, the weeds get out of control. We took care of the weeds up until when the plants could fight them off themselves, and then we let the weeds go. And the weeds really didn't bother them, to be honest. Like I said, they're a competitive plant. They beat out everything around them. Once they get to that certain stage, or they're, about that tall or a little bit more. But this year we will be doing plastic. We just didn't have the money for it last year.
What stage would you say that the hemp plant beats out the weeds? That was my one question. And the other question was the name of the consultant. Was it like maybe the 12 weeks, 7 weeks?
Kistetter Sustainability Group, and then, I don't know.
I'd say it's right in active growth, probably a month and a half, more in the size. It has to do with the size. Like if it has a good advantage on the size compared to the size of what the weeds are, it does great.
Right, and that really just depends on how much rain we got, and ours took a slow time to shoot up because we just didn't have rain at first. So then when we got a massive rainstorm right smack dab, maybe in the middle of the summer, that's when all our plants literally shot up overnight, and we noticed a lot of growth.
So getting into that, we knew we weren't going to use plastic. We didn't have the money for it. So we tried out a couple of different things. You can see right in this little section right here, this is all hay that we tried to put around each plant. For 5 acres, that is very labor intensive, and we stopped after that much. We were like, there's no way we can keep doing this.
Also, the weeds didn't care. They came right through it anyway. So I was like, nope, we're not doing this.
Yeah. So what we did do, this is Dennis, and Dennis is riding an ATV. On the back of that ATV is a small cultivator, and we cultivated the rows in between for up until the plants got big enough where we couldn't get the ATV through without affecting the crop. This worked pretty well. It kept the weeds down, and as you'll see in later pictures, we were effective in what we wanted to do.
So while the plants were in the field, of course, we were listening to our consultant who was advising us when to lay down specific nutrients. We kept cultivating. We also added, I should probably touch on our pests. We used diatomaceous earth, which is a natural, organic pest control. So the biggest pest problem we had was aphids and also Japanese beetles. Diatomaceous earth took care of the aphids, and then the Japanese beetles, we just hung the hanging bags pretty much everywhere throughout the field and the farm, and within a week they were taken care of. Like I said, we didn't have any problem with deer. Rabbits, nothing. The biggest problem I'd say we had with deer was sometimes in the earlier stages the deer would step on them, but no munching, no eating. So while the plants were doing their growing, we moved on to focusing on where the heck we were going to put all of them, and that was cleaning out one of our extremely old barns that you can see has some issues, but it was full of junk from years of hoarding things, of our parents hoarding things, and also lots and lots of old moldy hay that we had to get rid of because we couldn't put the plants in with any of that junk. So that took the majority of time. Our preparation was prepping a place that the plants were going to be hung.
Yeah, and once those barns were prepped, then we went into planning and trying to prep on how we were going to dry them. We looked at a lot of different methods, but particularly for the barn that you see right here, the best method that we could come up with is to create a series of layers of baling twine going across. So, like you see these beams right here. Oh, they disappeared. Sorry. The beams right there. So we use that beam system to do a series of baling twine across, and then we would hang each plant on the baling twine directly from one of the base branches. We would lift it up, put the base branch on, and bring it down. The top layer was up in those rafters, and we'll get back to that. That was kind of difficult to do, but during this time we were cleaning and we were trying to plan on how we were going to do this that was cost effective, that would move quickly during harvest, and would provide the best for the plant.
Like we said, we were working on like little to no budget, so you know, if we had our ideal pulley system, it would have had hardware and all these things that would have given it proper spacing and everything, but you gotta work with what you have, and so we ended up using baling twine, which was $24.99 for like 9,000 feet, and fisheye hooks and zip ties, and that's it.
That's it.
Oh, this is a video. We don't have to show it today. That's my dog. He really likes laying underneath the plants while we were out in the field. He got some good shade. All the dogs did. You can just go to the next one. So also, while we were, the plants were growing, and you can see here they're getting a lot bigger. There's my dog again. He really liked it. We were making the video. We did a lot of online presence stuff, Facebook, social media. The other thing we didn't really mention, our field is like really, really on a very busy road. There is no hiding it. We didn't have any money for fencing. We were not going to spend the money on that. And so we tried to beat it by actually just putting ourselves out there more. Being online, you know, making sure people knew where we were, having people come to the farm to visit, showing as many people as we could these plants, because there was just no hiding it. So
yeah, we also worked directly with the Washington County Sheriff Department. They had our permit on file before we even announced that we were doing this. All the police officers in that area were very aware of us and were aware of, you know, the legality of what we were doing. We also did a series of educational meetings kind of like this in our area, so that people who are curious about what exactly this was, because it does look like marijuana, would be able to come and understand, and then they could tell their friends. And we created sort of a community where everybody in our area knew what we were doing.
yeah. So okay, next one if you don't mind. We also did the Washington County Fair, which is where we talked to a lot of people about the differences between marijuana and hemp, and talked a lot about CBD. That's where we found out that most of the CBD users in our area were actually people with arthritis. We started talking to people about how it had really affected them and their lives, and that was really eye-opening, because as somebody who didn't know what it was before I started this or used it, it really opened my eyes to just how many people who have been using it for years. I had so many older people come up to me and say, it's in the news now and it's a trend, but I've been doing it for years. You know, so we had a lot of people just encourage us and tell us their story, which is very helpful to know that it's not a placebo thing. It's something that's actually making waves in people's lives. So those are some of the pictures of the plants. Now they're getting quite big. Like I said, we had that one rainstorm smack dab in the middle of a drought, and they shot up overnight. We only had to hand water once. We did not have drip irrigation this year because we couldn't afford it. It was on a 90-degree day. We didn't really mind getting wet because it was hot. So, but we only had to do that once.
Yeah, there's something to be said about how we did not have drip irrigation, how there was a drought and we only hand watered once, and yet it seemed to thrive. We'll talk about our yield in the end, but with all of that in mind, it did great.
Yeah.
Elevation.
Okay, next slide.
Yeah, we can talk about
We did hit some trouble though with that non-fence thing happening. Doesn't matter if we had a fence or not, we still got robbed. So, and we are currently we're at court right now seeking restitution against the two gentlemen who were arrested for stealing $1,500 worth of hemp plants from us in the middle of the night. So.
that's where the police sort of awareness really helped because the police were called as soon as they parked. They arrested these guys just minutes after them completing this crime, and the police knew right away where it came from and what it was. They were not charged with possession because this is not possession. They were charged with grand larceny.
For theft and trespassing. It was pretty easy to see where they had taken the plants. They had hacked them to bits and pieces, cut some of them clean. Other ones like that, you could tell they had just used what looked like just like a blunt knife to just rip them apart. They had some plants where they took just the top and left the bottom, which sucks because that's everything we want was at the top. So
Candles and charges.
yeah, so we're at court right now doing that. So I'd suggest if you are growing, be friends with your local police force. Give them all your information. Let them know where you are. We asked patrols on our road to be upped. We've got nothing to hide, but people are going to try to take it like they just are. And when they were arrested, the officers questioned them. They said, well, what were you going to try to do with it? And they said, well, we were going to try to smoke it and sell it. And they're like, this isn't marijuana, right? And they claimed that they thought that we were posing to the public, pretending that it was hemp.
We had lots of signage. We had lots of signage that specifically said this is hemp, not marijuana. It has little to no THC in it.
Yeah, and we had cameras, and we had signs that said we had cameras. So it's just real dumb. Just real dumb. Okay, next slide.
Just real quick on the security part. Do you think that the use of guard dogs on the farm is useful in addition to the cameras and
The question is about like guard dogs.
Yeah.
We have dogs at the farm, and mine is actually barks at the sound of anything making a move outside. But I actually wasn't home that night, and it might not matter. It really might. It really, if the dog barks and you catch them, awesome.
I mean, like trained guard dogs.
Oh, well then, it just comes into if you want to run that risk, then that's fine. But I don't know what the legal limits are for a guard dog if they were dangerous.
Yeah,
They did something
that could up your
dangerous. I don't know
insurance
what
or
that is.
liability.
We want to keep everybody safe. We want to protect our crop and also not commit any more crimes or hurt anyone.
Right. So now we're moving on to harvest time. We ended up getting those plants back, and it was really good for us because we ended up being able to have a test trial for our pulley system. It sucked because those plants were nowhere near ready, and had they been allowed to grow to their full potential, we could have made a pretty penny off of them. But because they weren't, they were not mature whatsoever. So we got to use them as an example, but we really didn't get any bud or hardly any poundage off of them, which was really unfortunate. So here we are using them after we got them back to test out our pulley system.
We didn't do this pulley system for every level of hemp growing because it was pretty labor intensive. It took some time. But the highest rafters, way up here, we didn't have a cherry picker to get up there. Also, the floorboards were kind of soft, so we were a little worried that they wouldn't hold. And there was no safe way to really access it. We did have a ladder that could reach some of the beams, but we couldn't reach the middle. And so we had to brainstorm on how we could use that space without doing something really dangerous. And so what we did was we put in the baling twine across those top beams. And then we lowered it all the way to the ground, and we had eye hooks on the side. We put the baling twine down on that tarp, then we laid out all of the hemp, and we connected them with zip ties. We didn't have to do that for the lower levels because they just hung. But because we were going to pull them up in a pulley system, they would have all come together in one big thing. So we stuck them with zip ties, then the people got on either side of the hanging rope and pulled them all the way to the top, and then we tied them off on the eye hooks. It was only for one level. It was finicky. It took a lot of time, but it was the only way we could get it done.
And this part was particularly hard because, as you can see, our barn, it's super old. It was not properly heated. It didn't have proper air ventilation, which are two key things that you want in your drying system. You want heat. You want to get rid of all the humidity that you can. and the moisture in the air, and you want space for your plants too, because they're mostly water, and if they're touching when they're drying, they'll start to mold. And if one of them molds, they're all just gonna start molding. If any of them are touching, it's a instant chain reaction, and it doesn't take long for them to start going to the mold. So we did lose some in this process. Some got packed in really tight that we didn't see, that when we started shucking after they were all dry, we pulled them down and they were mold. Some looked like they were fine and didn't have mold, and then as we started shucking and looking in between, the buds, the layer of the buds, they had mold in there as well. So proper heat, air ventilation, and getting the moisture out of the air is key in the drying process. So this is us on our day. We were officially done harvesting. Took a lot of friends and family. As you can see, we used every inch of our barn space possible, and even as it was, we ran out of room. And we had to store some of our plants in Binghamton at CSG. Costetter Sustainability Group had a warehouse in Binghamton, and some of our plants had to be stored there because we just ran out of space. So it took probably about, I think we did it in 4 days, or no, 2 days.
We did a couple of things. We did a pre-harvest where we did a small amount of crop just with 2 people across basically a week. And that was to fill up that highest rafter because it was going to take so much time. So we filled up that rafter, then we put the lower levels of baling twine up. And then we did 2 full days of a serious harvest where we had 4 to 5 people in the fields using loppers or chainsaws. We had 2 people in tractors that were, the people in the fields would put the hemp in the buckets of the tractors, and the tractors would bring them over to the barn. So we had 2 tractors going back and forth doing that. And then we had 4 to 5 people, depending what barn we were in, to actually hang them. They would pick them up from the pile, put them right on, make sure they have enough space, and just keep going. And it took 2 full days. It took a lot of work and a lot of help, and it went pretty well.
Yeah, it was getting 5 acres done in 2 days. It was not impossible. It seemed like it was going to take forever when we started, but now looking into our next year, if we wanted to do 10 acres, it's not impossible if you have the manpower, which is encouraging to us because there is not really a lot of equipment right now for this specifically for CBD. There is if you have 25,000 to 50 grand on you, but I mean some of this equipment isn't even up here yet specifically. So we've been doing a lot of research into that, about where we can get equipment and what can be used. A lot of people have used tobacco harvesters before. They show similarities there, but we're still checking out our options. And to be honest, a lot of the stuff that we've looked into, it might save on manpower, but it doesn't seem exactly more time effective than using hands. It really just doesn't.
Yeah.
So, next one. So the shucking process, I don't have a lot of pictures of because we were using our hands. So over here on the right, that's Sarah, and that's basically what we did. We laid down a ton of those blue tarps, and we invited all our friends and family over, and we got beer and pizza, and we just shucked for maybe, straight like 2 weeks.
2 weeks, and at that time it had grown quite cold.
Yep, so you take basically the whole plant. Now, we did change our system. We started off taking the plant, but it was huge, and basically just wrapping around and shucking off like that, and then bending the branch back. But basically we found that we were spending too much time wrestling with the plant. So then after that, what we started doing is that we had a team taking down the plants, cutting off the branches, getting rid of the stalk, and then organizing the branches, and people just shucking the branches, and then we had another team of people getting rid of the branches and the stalks. And that was much better and faster than wrestling with the entire plant while you were trying to shuck it.
Yeah, this was labor intensive. It took a lot of time. There are machines out there that can do this instead of your hands. I don't know if it saves on time. I think cutting it and shucking it, it takes the same amount of time, but
Yeah.
it's a possibility that it could be better.
a lot of the machines that we've been looking into, there's one called like a muncher, or basically it's like a broad board where it has different sized holes. And essentially you'd pretty much be doing the same thing we did, which is cutting the branches, organizing them to their size hole, and then having people pull the branch through the hole. Your bud and your leaf would fall into a tub, basically. And so who's to say if that is any faster than just doing this? Because I got pretty fast at that, you know. So there's a lot of arguments about machinery and what's more effective. I mean, that definitely would save my shoulder next season, not having to do that.
Then you have
But
to pull.
but you have to pull. Either way, you're using your hands to do it. So we're still testing out the theories on whether that is going to make our life easier or not. We just don't know.
Yeah.
So after we shucked in these huge piles, what we would do is basically taco that tarp, and we have old hay chutes in our barn. We'd have people go down below with these big bags right here and pull the bags open, and then we would funnel the hemp into the bag, pack it down, and once it was full, tie it off and ship it off. So that's basically how shucking went, but shucking was definitely the most labor-intensive, longest, hardest of the process.
Yes. So once we shipped it off, it went to a processor, specifically in Kentucky this year. One of the things that we went through this year with processors was that we originally started with a processor in Binghamton. After a while, it seemed that it wasn't going to be a good fit for us, so we moved to a processor in Brattleboro, Vermont, which we loved. We loved them. However, they weren't able to take on the capacity of crop that was coming in, and we felt it was going to take too much time to get it processed. So then that's when we moved into Kentucky. From the processor, it will go to our large buyer. We decided to sell our entire crop this year to a large buyer. Next year, we will have our crop come back to us, and we will start doing retail, selling the oil ourselves.
And how we found the buyer was completely through, that's a question we get a lot, that was completely through our consultant company, CSG. A lot of what was happening, they were dealing with while we were growing. So as for questions about like marketing your plant and stuff, besides putting it on social media and making ourselves out there, we did not find our buyer. Our consultant company did. They worked really hard on that. Okay, next one. That might be it. There's an aerial shot of the farm and hemp. We definitely had, so we grew, I don't think we said this before, but we grew cherry blossom seed. I always get the name mixed up. Cherry blossom hemp seed, which also our consultant company provided for us. I don't know specifically where it originates from, but that's what they provided for their farms. It is really high in CBD. Has good consistency and keeping it low for THC. We did not go hot this year. At the time our plants were stolen, about midway through all of this, our test levels had come back at 0.07% THC. So we're allowed to get to 0.3, we were less than 1%. And we stayed that way. I think by the time that we harvested, I think we were just a little over 0.1%. So we never got to 0.3, which is good. But we also had little rain. Then we got a huge downpour of rain in the fall, lots of rain, lots of mold. So there were stressors there, and you can see it in the field. Right here where we got a lot of rain in this flat part, that is where most of our plants did pretty well. Right here, this is a hill, so a lot of our water was draining down into this flat part. And then out by the road there, you can see where there are patches, and that's because the runoff from the road, it's a lot more gravelly out there. We had a ton of rocks, it wasn't well filtered, the plants weren't doing as well out there. So maybe next year we're not even gonna plant that section. There's a lot of salt out by that way. I'd say definitely in the future, if you find hot spots in your field where the plants aren't doing well, just don't plant there. Yeah. Or if you notice that they're there, don't try to save them. They're probably going to go, and in the future, don't plant there again. Just avoid those spots, because what your other plants are doing, your field is sending resources to try to fix those hot spots, and it is affecting your other plants. So we're avoiding those hot spots next year. We're not even going to do it. The less stress on your plants, the better. That's how they're not going to go hot. So definitely avoid those lots.
Yeah, and altogether, our poundage for 5 acres was 2,500. That is low, that is underestimated what we wanted. So about half a pound per plant. The reason for this, we feel, is mostly the drought and then the rain. There was a lot of rain, there was a lot of mold in the field, and we lost some due to our drying. We packed them in too much. So we're hoping for a higher poundage next year. And then our CBD percentage was a range between 11 and 13%, which is pretty good.
Yep, that's pretty high. So hopefully next year we also can have a more consistent water flow. I think that is definitely adds to how well your plants are doing, and we did not have that. So hopefully that will add to our poundage for next year as well.
So did we say that we wanted to hold questions until after?
Oh, I can't talk about that. Sorry.
Delisha, did you want us to hold questions until after?
Yeah, if we can hold questions to the end, why don't we just get up and like stretch a little bit while we set up the next presentation, because I know you guys have been sitting for 2 hours now. That's all I ask.
I do have some handouts here, I only have 25.
Hey, bucked up.
That's pretty good stuff. Watch out.
Sorry.
Refocus it. It's not showing up there.
Moves a little bit. I think that's good.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's still all handmade. They're not gonna figure that out.
Make money. You can't find the you can't find the Are you serious? It's on that list, mistake. We start the password is master 1, but it's chapter 5.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, did you go ahead? Everybody's taking pictures over here, and they get all. That was something else you might look
I
at.
have to ask. This is gonna be recorded.
Right, I'm just saying everybody's taking pictures like every slide, so they can scan, or tell them that they can watch this.
Yeah, I just gotta make sure with Larry that it's
Right.
fine.
Well, that's what.
My question's fine now.
Right.
That's mom, yeah, yeah, so that's my son, yeah. Just friends of mom. She feels great, so I used to suck. She's quite the life. She's still living on her This has been interesting.
You ready? Alright guys, we're gonna go ahead and get started so we can get done here in time. I don't remember who this is.
Yeah, that one's mine.
Okay, we're good. Careful of that tripod. Alright guys, we're gonna get started. Larry has it. I can see if you let me use it.
That's what I'm doing. Once I found the bathroom, I was, plus I can't see great.
All right, let's not knock anything over here.
Where's your presentation? Got this. Keep us on our toes. Good to go.
Okay, cool. Thank you, everybody, for waiting, coming back. I promise this is only about a 6-hour slideshow. My name is Bruce Ludovici. My wife's name is Amy. We're from downstate. We're about a mile from the northern New Jersey border. I can make New York City in an hour. My wife is from Queens, and I'm from upstate, way up past Buffalo, a place called Fredonia, New York. So we I met her in college, and I drew a big circle around the state thruway in 17, and she drew a circle with a piece of string around New York City, and Warwick happened to be right there, so that's how we settled there. That's my email address and my phone number if any of you want to copy it down quick. I'll have it at the end too. I welcome you to email me or give me a call if you have questions or comments. Please do. One thing I have found about doing this is you can't survive or you can't do it very easily without someone to talk to and someone to help you. It's not a competition between us. If anyone looks at it like a competition, they've got the wrong picture. we are not we're not a cornflake in the box compared to what's out west and what's growing out west. So if, as a group, if we work together, we all benefit. And that's how I got where I am, is by a few people helping me and just being honest with me and telling me and helping me avoid some mistakes, and the rest, we figured out the hard way. Myself and my wife are 25-year residents, 24 years in Warwick, New York. My wife and I are both public high school teachers. I teach physics and chemistry, and she does the same. You may be asking why I'm here at, 2 o'clock on a school day, and I'll tell you that I was never here. Because we're playing hooky today. I do have a successful lumber business. We call it Ludo Stick and Thin Lumber. I actually have Amish-made sawmills that I use from upstate, and it's nice in my area because there's no one doing it. So I have a very, very lucrative sawmill business. One of my sawmills is a wide format. I can cut 6 foot wide and 20 foot long. The saw blade is 26 feet around, a bandsaw blade. So I take these giant trees coming out of the city like walnuts that, weigh 10 tons. I have to bring them in on a tractor trailer with a hoe, with an excavator, and I slice them up and air dry them for years and then kiln dry them and sell them. So I have been in business. We do very well. We also operated a jewelry design business. My wife did it for a number of years, did very well. And we also helped our neighbors with a company called Granny's Gardens, which I believe the website is still up. We did all the farmers markets in Westchester, Rockland, Putnam County, and Orange County. In the peak before the recession really hit us, we were doing probably 15 farmers markets a week. At the peak, we did 80,000 sunflower stems cut and sold a year, plus 35 other varieties. So I had a really good experience, 10, 12-year experience of growing, and growing in plastic, and growing with drip irrigation and a computerized control system with solar clouds. That helped me immensely. I would never have been able to do it like the ladies did it here, doing it by hand without the experience. I would have never made it. The problem with writing a talk real quick is that you don't know what other people are going to say, so most of my slides are repeats, so I'll kind of skip them real fast. THC, 3%, be careful. United States, Texas I know started, I think the 1 or 2 other states have started. Most states in the country now, there's a good number of them are either growing hemp or in the stage of starting to license to grow hemp. It's growing, and that's why I said, where I am, there's an agricultural place called Pine Island. It was a prehistoric swamp. They find, to this day, they find woolly mammoths, mastodon skulls, 10,000, 12,000-year-old. My friend of mine, my good friend who I grow with, Brian Pavolsky, found the largest, most intact moose elk in the world in the swamp, in his dirt. It's a giant swamp that they drained in the 1800s. Polish immigrants came in because the land was cheap. They drained it, and it's just black potting soil. It's flat as a pancake as far as you can see. Pine Island has a history of people not talking to each other. They're very friendly, but they don't share a lot of insights into their businesses and what each other are doing. It's detrimental if you're doing that with hemp. It really is detrimental. You really have to share, because when you share, other people share with you, and the most simplest things can save you so much time and energy. New York State last year, I think, right about 3,500 acres were growing. I looked that up. The high value materials derived from hemp CBD, and that's an anti-inflammatory. The flowers, the buds are where you're getting your CBD oil from. I was asked to come here today and talk a little about extraction, which I'm getting into. So that's the first part of the talk, is extraction. There is 2 stages of growth of your hemp plant when you plant it. You get a vegetative state of growth up and through probably the first week in August, and you want to hit them with as much nitrogen as you can. Much nitrogen as they'll take before they show signs of stress. You want vegetative growth to be uncontrollable. The second you start seeing buds on your flowers, probably the first week in August, you'll just start, your plants will be real wispy and they'll flow in the wind, and there'll be these beautiful plants with no flowers. The second you start seeing those buds, you want to kill the fertilizer. No more nitrogen. You can give them boom booster and things like that, but you stop the nitrogen because you don't want vegetative growth now. Now you want it to go into the flowers, the buds. And what will happen is your plants will actually start to shrink. the leaves, which are this long, just a leaf, will start to shrink up as the season progresses, and to the point where you have just a plant with buds and very little leafy material. It just reabsorbs it. To get the CBD oil out of your plants, there's a couple of processes that New York State allows. One is called high pressure CO2. And what you have is you take CO2 gas, the same stuff you put in soda that makes it bubbly, is you're going to use that under what they call supercritical conditions. Supercritical is a point where you have a solid, a liquid, and a gas. Those are your common phases. It's when you pressurize a gas so greatly and you heat it that it's no longer a liquid and it's no longer a gas, but it has properties of both. So it can flow through things and permeate things like a liquid, but it can dissolve things as well. We've been using it in coffee for 1970s to take the caffeine out of coffee beans. If you ever looked at whole coffee beans and they're caffeine free, how do they make it that way? You use high pressure CO2, super high critical pressure CO2, and extracts it out. These systems tend to be very, very small. There are massive ones out there, but most of them are small scale. They do small amounts and they're very expensive. We priced a few out, and I'm paying in the neighborhood of like $750,000 in something that would process maybe a couple bushels of hemp a day. They're really made for the marijuana market. Most of them are not suitable for hemp, although they do produce a very nice clean material, an end product. Most people are going with solvent-based extraction. New York State only allows ethanol. You can use butane, hexane. Those are real nasty compounds. Those are the things with the labels that come on them that says, if you use this, your kids are going to come out looking funny. They're really, really dangerous, noxious things. Ethanol is food-grade alcohol. You drink it in beer or wine. Ethanol, what you're going to do with it is you're going to mix it with your hemp, simply mix it with the hemp, and the ethanol dissolves out your oils. It dissolves out other things as well, but mostly the oils. This can be done at cryogenic temperatures like 40, 50 below zero, or it can be done at room temperature. There's pluses and minuses of this. If it's done at room temperature, it extracts out a lot of other things, like fats and waxes, lipids, classic compounds of lipids. It also is going to extract out like your chlorophylls. So you're going to get a very dirty product if you do it at room temperature, and you're going to have to spend time and money downstream to clean that product up to get your nice pure CBD oil. If you do it at cryogenic temperatures, you leave most of those other compounds behind and take out your pure CBD oil with a few other things. And the time and money you have to spend downstream to clean it up is a lot less. Right there, this is a machine, this is a mixer from a company called Coldfinger. They're very big on the market. They're really popular with any of the magazines. What that really is a giant Maytag washing machine. It has pumps that bring in ethanol and release it, and inside of it you're going to find a big basket. And the basket, just like your washing machine, you put your hemp in it, it fills with alcohol, it soaks for an hour, it agitates it slowly, and then the alcohol drains and this thing spins really fast to get any alcohol out of the hemp back out and leaves you with just a dry cake. Really big ones, actually, not much bigger than this. This is about a 100-gallon one. Ones that are larger actually do everything automatically, and the hemp flows out. It goes into a continuous centrifuge, and it separates out your oil and your hemp. We're talking about plants that produce, maybe they go through 10,000 pounds of hemp a day. They could do all of New York State in a few months. Some of these plants that are out west in Oregon, California, Colorado. They're coming our way. Post-extraction process, so that's called extraction. Now you have your alcohol mixed with your oils. You have to now separate those two out. You still have the alcohol. You're going to need to take that solvent and distill it off and get what they call a crude oil, a raw crude oil. It can be used like that, bless you, it can be used like that, or it can be refined. A lot of the things you see on the market, like but creams, lotions, food additives, pet products, most of them all use raw crude oil. To my knowledge, most states, the states that I've looked at, you do not need to remove anything from that if you're not going to ingest it. California and New York State now have pretty stringent guidelines on what can be in hemp oil if you're going to ingest it in the form of, say, a supplement. So there's guidelines for supplements. If you're just using it for a cream or a topical, then you can use it just the raw crude oil. And that's all on the state health department's website. I believe it's on the permits from the ag and markets as well. Short path distillation. Post extraction, to get that alcohol out of your CBD oil, what you're really going to end up doing is just pretty much what you would do in a distillery. You're going to distill the alcohol out, and what's left behind is your raw crude oil. You recapture that alcohol, and you bring it back and you reuse it. After a while, your alcohol picks up a lot of water and moisture, and then it has to be either discarded or reprocessed. A lot more care has to be taken and to get that water back out of the alcohol to get it pure again. You're using alcohol somewhere in the range of 99% pure alcohol with almost no moisture at all in it. There are companies that are making now alcohol that's denatured, and it literally, you're buying them in giant totes, 310-gallon totes of pure alcohol. But you can't consume it because it's been denatured so that it would be poisonous. But it's not poisonous to extract it. Short path distillation, this is the most common way of taking it further. Short path distillation, it's called short path because the distances that you're actually taking the material from and to, it's a very short path. So this is a hot chamber, and you're running this under extreme vacuums. So down to like 0.001 atmospheres. At 0.001 atmospheres, water boils at like, I think almost 0 degrees. So pretty much space, out in outer space, you would have no atmospheric pressure. That's what you're doing this under. When you use super low vacuum, your boiling points all go down, and that allows you to boil materials that would not normally boil easily. So CBD oil has a boiling point of somewhere in the 450 range, and it varies a little bit. This allows you, under vacuum, to boil at a much, much lower temperature. And what you're going to do with this is you're going to boil off your raw crude oil, and your CBD oil will come out, and it will leave behind any impurities. So if you have heavy metals in your soil, I've talked to a few people who tested their hemp crop from central New York, and they found heavy metals. And they said, we never sprayed. I don't know if it's fallout from Lackawanna and Buffalo from all the coal-fired power plants for all those years. That soot and dust and ash had to land someplace. I don't think many people ever tested for heavy metals in food crops. I don't know this, but I'm assuming the reason why we never knew it was there because no one's ever looked for it. But there are trace amounts of heavy metals. So copper, we found copper and we found some lead, and there's others. You have to be very, very careful. Products that are used in these, you would use this product for things like tinctures and for vape pens. New York State does not allow vape pens. You can't use CBD oil for vape pens in New York State. We can't. If we're processors, we can't do that. And it's advised against to try to make ingestible products as well, because even if it's just a supplement. So we're sticking personally just to topicals and creams, things like that. But what this apparatus does is it gives you a very, very, very clean, pure CBD oil. Right now, CBD oil, pure CBD oil, distillate like this is selling for $5,000 and more a kilogram. So it's a nice item. Something like this, a good quality system, you're also looking at $40,000 to set it up and to maintain it, just to get the equipment in. It's expensive. Any of your bottlenecking right now is happening in this sector because it's very expensive to get into, and the overhead is you've got to buy the hemp, you've got to extract it, and then you've got to find a market for it. So it tends to be a little bit less populated field right now, but I'm sure in the next year or two it's going to explode. For a system and building a system, throughput is a direct function of the system size. The larger system, the more you're able to process. Multiple mid-sized systems are more advantageous than one. If anyone was thinking about going into extraction, it's very, very desirable to have several small or mid-sized units, so that if one goes down, you're not out of business. You can have multiple systems. One goes down for servicing or for parts. You've got several others to run. Ethanol extraction. We looked at it. We found systems, complete turnkey systems, 200 pounds of dry hemp a day to raw oil. It's going to run you about $300,000 to $400,000, and that doesn't really depend on infrastructure either. And 1 acre is going to give you about 1,000 pounds, a conservative estimate. So you're looking at a machine, system that would be able to work through about 1 acre a day. Not even 1 acre a day. I'm sorry, 1 acre a week. 1 acre a week, and that system's going to cost you $300,000 to $400,000. The complexity scales up. So if you have the money in this business, you can get anything you want built. A lot of stuff is coming in from China. It's low quality, and it gets relabeled by American companies. So they have the systems made and built in China. They bring them in, they relabel them. Maybe they put American electronics on them, touch pads that are in English. They change the stickers, and now they're this company's. If you go online and you look at something like Alibaba, which is a online eBay kind of, but for Asian products that you buy directly from Asia, from Asian manufacturers, you'll find plenty of these systems for sale. It's a big risk. American-made machinery, American-made material, glassware, electronic components, 4 or 5 times more expensive, but people to help you are a phone call away, and they come with warranty and they come with service.
Bruce, that 200 pounds per day, is that the 100-gallon?
Yeah, you would run that 100-gallon cold finger twice a day, yeah. And then that cold finger, that big stainless steel wash tub, would be hooked up to what they call, most cases, a thin film evaporator. And imagine just a big column, and it's got a tube inside of it, and it uses a wiping blade, like a windshield wiper, and it goes along the inside of this column tube, and it sprays your ethanol CBD oil on this inside column, and that inside column heats up from the outside. So it evaporates out the ethanol, and the oil condenses and just gets kind of wiped to the bottom constantly. And it never turns off. You just constantly run this thing day and day and day. So you're mixing ethanol with hemp, extracting it. It goes into a holding tank, and then it drains into this thin film wipe machine. And what comes out the bottom is your raw crude oil. You take that raw crude oil, depending on how much you invested, that short path dispenser, short path machine I showed you, a couple of those set up in a lab, and you're rolling. You could take that raw crude oil and you could put that into a larger machine, like from Hart Industries, they're called. Looks like a medical rack you see in a hospital. There's a bunch of compressors on it. It has touch pads on it that control everything electronically, and that just does it non-stop. There's no batch to it. It just runs continuously. $2 to $3 million to do it. But consider that if you have, and this is just like growing, when you hear the numbers and it shocks you. This is today. Tomorrow, next year, the year after, all bets are off. So these numbers that anyone presents to you, what you're getting for growing a field of hemp, what you're getting for oil, what things cost, that's today. And this market is so volatile that it could be half of this, it could be double. There's just no, and anyone who guarantees you anything, take that with a grain of salt, because unless you have an attorney who's gonna go sue someone for not maintaining a contract, good luck with that. You just, you know what I'm saying? Even if it's in writing, really good luck with enforcing it. What are you gonna do? You're gonna chase them halfway across the country with an attorney to get to honor a piece of paper. If you can find them. We have horror stories of this. One of the things you'll learn when you grow and when you do this is that there are people in this industry who want to make money off of you, and they want to buy from you, and they want to sell to somebody else, but they want you to provide all the material, and they want the other person to provide all the money, and they want to sit in the middle. And you really, really, really have to be careful of people who are unscrupulous. It happens all the time. And it's happened to farmers where I live. Someone promised them $10,000 an acre, They cut it, harvested it, and delivered it. Truckloads, we're talking tons of material. Never a penny came back. Just never a penny came back. And that was under contract. And then you find out the guy is in Canada and he can't be found. And so just be very, 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 I treat my hemp like my children. It doesn't leave my eyesight. And if it goes anywhere, I'm with it. You know, when I sell hemp, I deliver it. And here you go. You got that check for me? Thank you. I mean, that's what I do. If you go through a broker house and it's reputable, then that takes a lot off your plate. If they charge you for that service, but if it's a reputable place and you can have people who will attest to it and have worked with them before in the past, that's a different story. Just be very, very careful. There's a lot to this. You can do it small scale. Again, you would need a permit. This is a separate permit for extraction. And you can do it small scale. How successful you are, it depends, I guess, on how much you really want to do. If you wanted to open up a small, my wife wants to make chapstick and she wants to make, hand cream and lip balm. This stuff does work too. I mean, I don't know if you have anyone who takes it. I saw people raise their hand. Working on the sawmill, you can imagine, constantly lifting things, constantly moving things. I have pinched nerves in my neck, my wrists go numb. At night, my hands, my arms just get cold and dead. I have to get up and shake them constantly. A month on this stuff, it's like, whew, you sleep, you feel great.
I was just going to say, as an example, a friend of mine makes it.
Yeah.
Small scale. I burned my hand with some hot water, put Neosporin on my hand. It still stung, it did nothing. I put the salve that she gave me, which was made with hemp and calendula and all sorts of other things, and instantly the pain went away, and within a few days, the burn had healed up completely.
Yeah, no, and
it does work. I mean, that was just.
It does. My mother's 84 years old. I didn't even know they did this on people who were 84 years old. No offense to anyone who's 84 in here, but her shoulder, she tore the ligaments in her shoulder. They replaced her shoulder. They did a shoulder replacement on an 84-year-old lady. And I was like, Mom, this is crazy. Don't do that. She was like, I can't lift my arm. I'm so miserable. I can't ride in the car. I can't even pick up the phone. She had it replaced. This was 2 weeks ago. She is like in rehab and she's moving her arm almost completely around. And she's been putting this cream on her shoulder. And she says, Bruce, it's nearly pain-free. I don't know how much it just because she's got great genes, she was more healthy, and how much with the CBD oil. But I personally noticed a big difference with it.
Back to the sawmill.
Back to the sawmill every day. You got it. Nothing. I love my sawmill. I'm not leaving that. No. I'm in the right place.
Does that say 300,000 to 400,000 on that middle paragraph? I can't see from here.
Yes.
Yes, that's how much it would cost to install. But back to the numbers. If you think about a field, if you have 1,000 pounds, roughly that's 500 kilograms of hemp. At 10% oil, now we grew hemp in our fields, we had 14% when we finished. 14% CBD oil and 17% combined. There's a couple different other things to add to it. And very, very low THC. But at 10% oil, if you have 500 kilograms and you extract that, 10% of 500 is 50. That's 50 kilograms of oil.
5,000 a kilogram.
Well, that would be for the distillate, but just the raw oil.
Okay, gotcha.
Low wholesale on raw oil right now is $2,500 to $3,000 a pound, a kilogram. So what's 2,000 times 50? $100,000? No, $1 million.
Yeah.
Sorry, $1 million. $1 million in oil from an acre.
Retired.
So there's a journal, there's a free online magazine, and you can subscribe to it, and they send it to you for free, and you get an email to. It's called Hemp Daily. Hemp Industry Daily, and there's just a great wealth of information there, and you can watch market trends, and from that you can see other market trends as well.
Is the CO2 a two-step process like the ethanol extraction?
Yeah, because the CO2 gets you out a much cleaner product, but you still have to winterize it. You have to get the wax and fats out. And, California and New York has followed suit. Oregon is doing it. And that is, they're making the oils that are going to be ingested And I think in this market, everyone's waiting for the FDA to approve it for food. They're getting lobbied like crazy. From what I have read, if it does get approved, it'll be the next Red Bull, it'll be the next health drink, everybody will want it. If that happens, it's gonna go crazy. But in order to be an ingestible food product, or I should say a food product, in order to be like a supplement, it has to pass testing for heavy metals, pesticides, herbicides, and mycotoxins. Mycotoxins are from fungus. So no matter how you extract your oil, if you want to take it to a supplement quality material, it almost has to go through the short path to get cleaned up. And then there's also other things that you can do, if someone have to do to clean up even further, like chromatography, and there's a whole gamut of things that has to be done. So a lot of people I know, not a lot, I only know a few people who do it, but the people I know send their oil out and have it cleaned up at a lab and then get it back and it's clean and pure. A lot of people send their hemp out and have it extracted and get it back in oil form.
Do you test it before you send it out, and test it afterwards?
I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. I would assume you would test it before, when it comes back. You would have to have it batch tested.
So your crop was 14% CBD.
Yes, just under right now, like we tested a couple months ago.
So how do you store that to preserve that percentage? Or does it, 8 months from now, will it be 10%?
We don't know. I would assume like anything, it's gonna break down slowly. We're storing it out in a pole barn where it's very, very cold. We're storing it in those big giant white super sacks, we call them, they're cubic sacks. And we're storing them in, they're lined with a plastic liner. And then that plastic liner gets folded on top and tied tight, and the top gets folded, and we went as far as to duct tape it so it can't, very little air can get into it.
One other question. For some of these, your system or some other bigger systems, what do they do with the waste product?
Most of it landfill.
Just straight
Dumpsters, yeah.
There's no regulations?
I don't think so, because it's food grade ethanol. And by the time you get done processing it, you've removed almost all the ethanol. It's almost dry when it comes out of those machines. It has to be, because that's all your profit if it wasn't. Some people are actually putting it through a screw press and just getting the last, bit of juice out of it. I've seen powdered cakes that they make.
You don't have to take special steps to.
No, not with the ethanol, which is nice, because it really is, it's not noxious at all. But with ethanol, you also have problems like fire codes, fire suppression. You pretty much have to have a fire suppression system in your building that's equal to a gas station. The big halon extinguishers everywhere. God forbid someone walks with a cigarette, you kill them. And then also you have the problem of storing ethanol on site. You just can't have 5,000 gallons of ethanol laying around in the shop. All the profits, all the equipment, and all your troubles grow exponentially.
Did you have to go through the general manufacturing practices that were explained earlier during the annual stuff?
For myself?
Yeah, for your processing.
We are just starting that. So what we're gonna most likely end up doing with I had to get capital investors involved. I had to raise capital. We're most likely gonna hire a group that does this, that makes the equipment. They'll come in, they'll do the permitting process, they'll build it, install everything for the fire code, everything, turnkey, and then actually train us to run it. And that's a lot more expensive than doing it yourself, but it's a lot faster and a lot less headaches. Where we are down towards, I don't know about up here, I shouldn't judge, I don't know, but down there, things are very contested. You don't get away with much of anything. You get stopped cold, they slap a sticker on the door and you're locked out. So it's just not worth it.
Do you have a name for that consultant group?
For the constructor?
For the consultant group?
Almost any one of these companies that build the equipment, if you call them, they will put together a system for you. And they will take care of everything, like Coldfinger does that. There's a bunch of labs. Buy yourself any online cannabis magazine, or a lot of them are, like I said, free, the trade magazines. Anybody in there that's selling the equipment will either do it or give you someone's name that does it.
Just so I'm clear, so much information going on here today. Is it for the CBD, the oil that you're talking, is it the flower or the whole entire plant?
The flower only.
The
flower only. And the leaves around the flower get really sticky. One of the things you're going to find when you pick your hemp, and I'm going to show you how we did ours, which is very, very different from how ladies did theirs. you get covered with oil. I mean, I am talking, I was so covered by 12 o'clock in the afternoon with oil from walking in the fields that at one point I dropped my scissors, which have red handles, and I'm just getting frustrated, I'm hot, I'm, you know, trying to find these scissors on the ground, and my son walks over and he peels them off my leg. He's like, here they are. And they're really stuck to my thigh. So I should have saved our clothing and extracted it. We could have made a fortune. So there are no seeds when you grow CBD,
Okay.
which I'll mention here in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, other people mentioned it too, but it's a big thing. Facility requirements, again, depends how big you get. You need pretty much bomb-proof everything, switches, doors, motors, everything, and nothing can spark. No open circuits on anything if you're gonna do extraction. Fresh air ventilation, which means greater heating costs. Higher ceilings to accommodate prefab rooms. There are companies now that will supply, if you have the money, C boxes, 40-foot C boxes, the entire lab, equipment, fire suppression, all certified, comes on a truck, they drop it off, hook it up to water, electric, and you're extracting. Expensive, like $300-400 a square foot for the box, and the equipment is not included, just as fire suppression and all the ratings on it. Office space, okay, furniture, future testing, security, all kinds of things. You can imagine what it costs. We had theft as well in our field. People did steal from us, and I noticed it twice. Once when someone came in and they took plants and they ripped them up and they threw them into the trees. And I guess what they did is they ran around the field and thought they were in a pot field at 2 o'clock in the morning, stole a bunch, and then got like to the edge of the field and said, you know, there's no flowers on these, and I'm not getting caught with these in my car or my truck, so they just threw them in the woods. That was one instance we found. The other thing I found is when I was picking the hemp, the tops of plants were missing. And you can see how the growth had come out since, but someone had clipped them. There's nothing I can't really do anything. I can't go back through photos that have been erased. And everybody says to use game photos. What I'm gonna do next year, and don't tell anyone this, but I'm gonna build a big sign, and it's gonna be right on my front of my field. And I'm gonna have about 4 of them on each corner of the field. And they're gonna have a nice big, danger, stay out, industrial hemp, the state has there, what you're supposed to write down, and then it's gonna get fine print. And in the middle of it, there'll be something like an eye dotted, and that'll be my camera. So as people walk up to read the fine print, I'll take their picture. And it'll be a 2x4 construction, so no one will know. Because I have pictures of this thing in my field, and I'm not sure if it's a bear or if it's a person, nothing you can do really. And our fields were remote, so it wasn't like I could run power out there and have a 12-volt camera system. It wasn't, I looked at the price of solar cameras, and it was just ridiculous. But security was a big thing. Our farming experience. Now, I exaggerate everything. There is no way I can exaggerate more. I can't exaggerate enough to tell you how much work this was. I can't exaggerate enough. So keep that in mind. We hired somebody who had a permit to grow our plants. It cost us more money, but that's where they grew them. The floors had in-floor heating. They knew how to grow plants. There was a brand new facility. It was airtight. We got back, you had rodents with problems. We did this because when we used to grow plants in our greenhouse, the squirrels and the mice would jump up on the tables. We would spend the entire day planting sunflower seeds, and a week later, they're not growing. They're not growing. I don't know why they're not growing. And there'd be no seeds in it, and you catch on. But like I said, all you need is one mouse to evade your mouse trap, and they're just have a field day. And this stuff smells, and they smell it, and they're rich in oil, and they love those seeds. We hired someone, and we told them, here's the seed, give it back to us. There's 5,000 seeds here, plant them in 72 pellet, the 72 size planters, yep. And that's what we did, and that's how we got them back. And they were beautiful. You can see they're just nice and uniform, it was like a carpet. So that was expensive, that cost us $1 a plant. So our plants going in the ground were $2 each. How do I value that? Here. One, I go to ShopRite, supermarkets where I live are called ShopRite. Tomato plants in the springtime are $3.50 each. What do you get from a tomato plant? $8 in tomatoes by the end of the season? This was worth a lot more. To me, I knew this would be a very, very critical thing, to have someone else do them, worry-free, when I could stop in, have my own key once in a while and check on them. It was, if this hadn't worked, I would have been nowhere. It would have been just done. So to me, it was like kind of using my all-star pitcher in the first game. I just had to win the game, and that was good for me. I also have, I had a budget. We had money set aside, we had saved money to do this project. So it was a little bit easier for me because I sell walnut slabs that reach from here to the back of the room. I'm not boasting, but I'm just saying you have to have a budget, and then you have to decide where you're gonna spend the money, what you're gonna spend it on that makes the most sense to you. We grew in plastic. So this was the nice thing about having the flower business. We still had the equipment. Here's our water wheel planter, there's the plastic. You just can't get any better than that. Drip irrigation under the plastic, so at the end of planting, you cut the rows in half where the water well was. We hooked in all our valves, threw the water well on, we had water, soluble fertilizer, right in the plant. I went around about a week after the plants were established, my son and I on our hands and knees with a cork, with a pin, big fat thick pin sticking out of the cork, a bottle cork from a bottle of wine. And we poked every single drip irrigation line at every single plant. Even though they had drip in them, we poked a hole on the bottom of the drip tape. After, when we were running it, it was big and fat, we'd poke a hole and put a little rock on top of it, and the water would just squirt out. What that did was got more fertilizer right to our plants and it didn't waste it in between the plants. When you're planting sunflowers or zinnias and you've got them every 4, 6, 8, 10 inches, you don't care about that. When you look at a field and you say, most of my field does not have a root structure I want to nourish, we spend an entire day and a half on our hands and knees, 47 and 48, doing the whole field. We were a little bit nutty. When we planted, there was just no doubt about it. Nolt's Produce, and I don't want to take any business away from New Yorkers, I really don't, but Nolt's Produce is run by Mennonites down in Pennsylvania. They sell these water wheel planters, they sell the plastic layers, the plastic layer deluxe is about $1,500, the water wheel planter is about $2,200. You can't beat that. And they are great people to deal with. They also sell the plastic and the drip tape. Tell them Ludo sent you.
They'll charge you double.
And they'll charge you more. And it'll go to my account. No, but yeah, they're really great people. Easy to fertilize and weed control. I could not have done any other way. I looked at these ladies when I first heard them talk like last month, and I was like, oh my God, they're just crazy. Considering what I had to do to keep this under control, I would have never done it. That's an unexpected 50-mile-an-hour wind on a nice June day about 3 days after you planted. And it hadn't had rain, so the plastic didn't get set into the dirt. And the entire field lifted. And my wife and I and my son and my daughter, oh, by the way, some of you may know this, but there's no labor like child labor. My wife and my son and my daughter and I spent about 7 hours reburying this field by hand. And if you've never done that, you don't ever want to. Like taking a shovel of dirt, having your kids hold the plastic down, and you're shoveling dirt as you're trying to work down the field to get this plastic back down. Because the plastic flips over your plant, it bakes your plant and kills it. Yeah. And you just, it's one of the downfalls of plastic, is that if you don't get a good rain to set that plastic in nice, quickly, it blows up. And if you've got 24,000 feet of it, it's quite stressful. I mean, and the wind was howling when we were doing this. And I was turning around, and I tried to catch a picture of it, I just couldn't stop. But some of this stuff was going up in the air at 40 feet, And now you gotta get it back down, you gotta get a plant back to the hole and bury it. I felt like I was in Steinbeck's novel, Grapes of Wrath. I really did. I'd come home, we'd all be just filthy, dirty, and shot. And my wife would be like, why are we doing this again? And I'm like, because we have to. Honey, we've never lost yet. I learned, again, I never stopped, but praying was like praying. And I'm gonna tell you something, I have a new, I'm not gonna say, I never lost my faith in God like that, no. But I got much more faith now. This was a line of thunder showers coming across our area. I mean, it was as straight as could be, and it was just right to the hole. And I said, please God, if that hits the plant, we're done. It's gonna destroy the whole field. We're gonna have, it's gonna erode all the soil as the first rain. We're done. This will never happen. We're done. And about 5 minutes before it rained, that's my house. The storm split and went around us. And we didn't get a drop of rain. I was like, thanks, thank you. All right, I won't ask for anything else, I promise. That was my Christmas gift, everything. Thank you. Unless, I really need something. But, you start to notice things like that. You start to notice crazy things you never thought twice about. And I mean, we grew, like I said, we grew flowers for a decade. It never bothered us. Pay $1, $2 for a plant, and everything starts to bother you. I can remember my wife out in the field on her hands and knees, and I'm like, what are you doing? She had Scotch tape. She's like, a plant broke. And she was Scotch taping the plant back together. Yeah. And she would and then she took a picture of it, she put a stick next to it, and it fell off, of course, and died. And she was so distraught. I'm like, it's okay. She's like, it was a $2 plant. We could have made $100 off that plant. So I should have put it out there, but she sends me this picture and this text message. She's like, it's growing. And there's this stick with one little green leaf coming off the side. And it grew. It recovered and the whole thing grew again. So it's fun. It was a lot of fun. Timeline. This is like late June. We got our plants in late the first week in June. I think June 11th we were finished planting. It was a cold year, you remember last year in the springtime. It was really cold. Tomato plants, nothing was going in the garden. I was in no rush to put them in the fields. So this is like late June, and that's the kind of growth you're having. And you can see we spread them out quite a bit. We were probably 6 feet on center, and we probably had, between the stalk and the stalk, we had at least 6 feet between the rows. So we had a good amount of spacing between the plants. Problems. We planted in a cornfield for the past 5 years. The problem you have is the corn, is it a thrip or a borer? The corn borer?
European corn borer.
European corn borer. They like hemp too. So what they'll do is they'll go into the plant and they'll eat your, and in the beginning I was thinking that was just the wear, the rub from the plastic, and then I started cutting apart and you find the little worms inside of them. From what I saw, if the plants got to a certain point, they were okay. It didn't kill them. We didn't lose many plants at all during the year to anything like sudden death. It did, I think, cripple them and stunt them a little bit. This plant here, I don't know what that was. The whole year, it just grew like it was wrinkled, and it grew big, it had flowers, and it always looked wrinkled. I never killed it because it never spread. I just figured, maybe it was a variation in the plant somehow. We also had plants that did you ever see it variegated? The white and green? Huh? That was pretty cool. So you see some neat stuff.
So, Bruce, you're referring feminized seed?
Feminized seed.
Yep. So these are self plants. So there is a good potential, higher than normal potential of some inbreeding depression in these plants.
Inbreeding depression. I was thinking that. I didn't know if I heard they also found out silver nitrate. They spray them?
Yeah, correct. That's not an issue.
No. That would
It's not silver nitrate, but
it's not silver nitrate.
Silver thiosulfate.
That's why I didn't remember.
But can you, since I got your attention, can you mention what cultivars you grew?
We grew one called Lifter.
Okay.
And Lifter was awesome.
You got it from Oregon CBD?
Oregon CBD. And I got another one called Super Sweet. Super Sweet grew really tall, and we thought it was going to be the best, and then it just kind of petered out at the end. So I had.
Where was that from?
I think it was from Oregon CBD. I do have the name wrong. It was something sweet. I can look at it again. But the Lifter, there were plants that were only, 2-3 foot high, and they were literally just breaking with the flowers. And I'll show you some pictures of that here in a second. Constantly going out in the field, I commandeered my son's motocross bike, and that's what I drove all summer. And you can see the PVC plastic. Our field sloped a lot, so with the drip irrigation, you had to make kind of changes as you went. One of the things we did is I had a line that came right here for the water well, and it goes across, and I can't really see it. I might be standing on the wrong side of it. But I had a line that ran down the field perpendicular to the rows, and that's where I put my valves to control each row. So our well pump is a great well, but it can't water the whole field possibly. You can't do 24,000 feet of line. So you would like water like 10 rows, go home for an hour or two, come back, and because we poked the holes, it didn't take a long to really get that area nice and soaking wet. But what happened was, at the end of this row where it really drops down to that tree line, it really slopes down. If you were standing down there and I was here, I wouldn't be able to see your head. Too much pressure. So mid-season, I had to run a PVC pipe, or at the beginning of the season, I ran a PVC pipe and I made another cut. So the bottom of the hill was watered separately, and then the middle part and the top part. And it alleviated a lot of the pressure problems, because what happens with your drip irrigation, if you have too much pressure, it blows out the end of your line. So you're watering, you come back in 2 hours, and all the water just going out one line onto the ground, which is.
What's the flow in the well?
The flow in the well, I could fill up a 55-gallon tub, a drum, in about 3 minutes. So 20, 25 gallons, you know.
And recovery is good.
Recovery was real good. I didn't see a big drop in the whole day. We had drilled 2 wells back when we were doing flowers. The first one was dry, and the second one just went right smack in the aquifer. And it's beautiful water too, which was really nice, which was a good plus for us. It's always been great. And you can see like the valve right there. So this is like a blue, they call it blue striped line. You buy it separately. It's a bigger 2-inch line. You roll it out and you run it. It's like a flat plastic, but it's a water line. You close one end, and then everywhere you have a row, they just sell a little punch tool. You punch a hole in your plastic pipe, and you take this valve. It's a little red valve, and you put one in the plastic pipe, the other one gets screwed onto your drip tape. It takes 2 seconds. I did 52 rows in probably 2 hours, took them all up. It's no big deal. But if you have the money for drip tape and plastic, it's the only way to go, I think. There's me, of course. That's at the end of what I was telling you about the vegetative state. There's really no flowers there. It's just a big wispy plant about this high. And remember, the rain. Down there, it only rained twice last summer. It rained once for 40 days and the second time for 60 days. That was it. Other than that was it. It was nice. So this is the grass in the fields when I left it for a week. So what I ended up doing was buying a walk-behind weed whacker. I saved $500 by not buying a self-propelled one. So I pushed it myself, and every day I just swore at myself and just cursed myself out as I pushed that sucker up and down the hills. I'm buying it self. In fact, the one I had is still in the field. My wife goes, "You're gonna take it?" No, I'm not gonna use it. I don't want it. Stay right there. But that's just 1 week of growth in grass, and then that's after I mow. So I would just go up and down the rows, and I would put my son on one side, my daughter on the other, and I'd get done and go, "Here you go." And they would push it back down, and we just go back and forth up the rows. It takes a long time. Spacing on your rows. If you've never done this before, you're thinking about doing it, get your row spacing perfect. So when you do mow, not like me, you don't have one row that takes 2 passes, one takes 1 pass, one takes 3 passes. You really want a nice uniform spacing, and you can do that with a tire tractor. Make up a little system for yourself somehow. There's ways to do it. But uniformity is nice. That is your enemy. That is 1 male plant out of 5,000. And you would recognize it because it has flowers. The female plant does not make a complete flower. This looks like a little grains of rice, and it just stands out. And I'm walking by, and I look at it and says, "Look at that, it looks different." It's a male. Now, if you get this male and it pollinates your females, they'll stop growing flowers and they go to seed. And that's kind of counterproductive to making CBD. You want all the flower you can get without it being pollinated. So what I did is I took this plant, I went back with a garbage bag, I put the garbage bag over the plant, tied the bottom, cut it off, brought it home, took a few pictures and burned it. This will become a big issue if you're growing CBD and someone next to you is not. If they're growing fiber with mixed plants. I believe, last Cornell did an experiment, I believe, you put male plants certain distance from female plants, and you watch the pollen.
I have those slides in my talk.
Oh, you do?
If people want to stay after.
Proved it. that you can get you can have a lot of problems. What I see happening where I live, I'm telling you it's gonna happen because we have a lot of sod farms and people get into fist fights over sod farms. Like someone not digging out their ditches and draining it to the next field. You're gonna have people who are gonna put a crop of this in between two CBD farmers and say, I could not grow this year if it was worth my while. I mean, you've got to make sure you have good neighbors growing good stuff if you're going to have anyone near you. More pictures of the field as the season got longer. That's the final picture of the field, and you can see those flowers. They're just massive, massive plants. Here's my take on this whole thing. We did not pick the whole plant. What we did is we went around and we picked only the flower stalks off the plant with scissors. So you go to the plant and you start cutting 15, 20 stems off a plant. We bought the big 20-gallon plastic totes from the supermarket and we just kept putting them in there nice and neat, standing up, packing them in there, squeezing them, putting them more in. My son and my daughter ran to the truck with them and I hired 7 people on a Saturday to help us pick. I paid them. My friends, maybe they make a lot of money, I don't know, but they didn't last long. They thought it was a novelty. They brought some beers and a pizza over. I was laughing when you said this. And then by lunchtime, they disappeared, and you never saw them again. You just didn't. You need a budget to hire people. Here's what we did. There's my lovely wife and my frowning daughter. You see my wife is real happy in that picture. She wants to put that stick someplace. Notice I'm way over here taking the picture before I ran out.
That was gonna be my question is how old are your kids and have they plan on your murder yet?
11 and 13, and they're used to the saw. 11 and 13, they're used to the saw. We made 4 by 8 foot racks, and I made them out of a hardware cloth. I made them out of pine, so they're nice and light, and I made 100 of them. And this is what we did: is we covered the greenhouse with tarps. We made 4 by 4 cut-off blocks so we could stack them. And you see in the background there's a blue commercial dehumidifier. The big ones. If you call up Sun Rental, any of your big rental companies, Taylor Rental, there's a couple other ones, United Rental, they have these for flood. You buy them. You can rent them, you can buy them. It comes out the same by the end of the season if you rent them for a month you buy them. Ours were $1,200 each. I bought 3 of them. And we put the dehumidifiers on, and every one of these stacks in between them, we put in one of the Harbor Freight barrel fans to circulate the air through. Running with those, we were able to process the entire field in about 3 weeks. It took about 5 days to dry. You can't dry them too fast because you'll dry out the plant, which is fine, but the stem still has moisture. When you go to pack them up, the moisture will come out of that stem and mold your bag. So you have to dry them, you're forced to dry them slow. This is a commercial dehumidifier. I called around to a couple of HVAC guys. I said, do you have anything old, used, I could buy cheap because I'm in trouble? I called the right guys. I just tore 2 giant ones out of a hotel swimming pool, dehumidifiers. He goes, I'll give it to you, I'll charge you for labor and material to install it. $800 later, I had one that could suck your hat off. I mean, just suck everything out of the room. And it saved my life. It didn't have a cooler on it. It didn't have any kind of temperature controls. I had to keep on bleeding Freon out of it because it would auto trip itself off because it got too hot in the room from the heat it made. But I was able to dry a ton of hemp. After the first week, I realized I wouldn't be able to finish. I had to go down to a friend's garage. He had tons of pallet racking. I just started laying it on pallet racks with fans to get this stuff to dry. The advantage, though, it takes longer to pick it than the whole plant. The advantage came in stripping it and packing it. Can you push play on that?
Once you lose.
This is after 1 day of picking. And you can see how we let it hang off the sides. That increased the area that you're drying. So at the end of the day, we have about 8 of those giant stacks that are 10 foot high. 10 high, plus old racks that we found just to dry it. And we just go in there every day and just feel it, grab it, make sure it's drying nicely. And then about 5 days later, you'll be able to take that and just start grabbing it all and putting the super sacks on the stem.
So that's how you sold it right there.
No, we just got it out of the greenhouse as fast as we could, so we had more coming in.
Strip it off the stem.
We had to take it back out and strip it off the stems.
Okay.
So, again, my son now, so there are 42 bags of unstripped hemp from the field. 42 cubic meters. Space, you gotta have it. I hired a group of individuals, it's the only picture I have of them when the ladies aren't throwing me gang signs to be funny. We had a ball, I made up a table so that on this side of the table, you could hang a bag of unstripped hemp. It had, 2x4 rails. On the far end, it had a bag, empty bag, so you could just keep on pushing it down. In the first 4 or 5 people, I was here, my wife was here. We would just start stripping as fast as we could, keep on pushing it, and everyone just strip. And then the last 2 people in the very end just picked out the little stems. What I have found by selling the hemp is that when people come to look at it, my hemp is clean. It's beautiful. There's no sticks, there's no dirt. It's just all beautiful flower. It is a much better product than a lot of the stuff I've seen from other people. It garners a better price. I don't want to take up all day, but that's, if I give you advice, you need the labor to pick and to strip it, and you need the room. And if you don't have the ability to have all that power and electric, you're gonna have to hang the whole plant, because there's just no way to dry it. One of the mistakes that we made is we left a lot of biomass in the field because it had botryosis, brown mold. Come to find out that brown mold does not affect the quality of the material. It does not affect the CBD oil content. We should have picked everything in the field. We left a lot behind. It gets extracted. You're not smoking it. You can't sell stuff to smoke in New York anyway, right? Yep. So,
So take it off.
take it all.
Take it
And the
off.
other thing too we found about, and here's another thing I want to mention, when we cut the plants and we harvest them, the plant doesn't die, and it never got fertilized. It just keeps growing. So we actually went back out, and where we had picked the first week, after we were picking the whole field, I mean, there was nothing on that plant. It was full of popcorn-sized little buds that were sticky. And we just went back out and started stripping it right in the field into bins. We stripped the equivalent of $10,000 on plants that had already been picked once because we left them in the field. And it just keeps growing, it just keeps growing. And if you go out in my field right now and you look at the plants, they're full of dried out buds because we just never pulled them down. So, it's amazing. Sorry?
You have this plant with all the flowers, with all the branches and leaves on them. Then eventually you come up and you got different stems, I suppose, with all these buds on top.
Right.
The whole thing is stripped down to the
stalk, right?
Down to the stalk.
When you're done trimming the
leaves and
leaves
flowers,
and bud,
everything
right?
go into the same stripping.
I actually did a little test. It was just, I took a bunch of ones that we picked, and I picked off all the leaves, and I dried them, and I dried the rest of the plant. The leaves only made up like 2-3% of the total weight. There's almost no weight in the leaf, so it really doesn't matter to strip them off. The stems, however, made up about 15% of the mass of the bud of that piece. So you save a lot by stripping them off. Some guys grind the whole thing and then sell the whole thing ground up.
I mean, stalk and all?
The stalk and all, yep.
So the stalk is in the top seed head then, still?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
When you strip it, somewhere it begins to break off the top.
You'd be amazed. That stuff is so fibrous, it's very hard to break it off.
So in other words, when you strip it, you're stripping off all the leaves, all the
Bud.
side stems, because
Yep.
the young ladies cut them all off. Strip them.
Right.
Then you got the main stem left. You strip those flowers off, the flowers and buds and all that stuff come off.
Yep.
From a single little skinny stem.
Some of our stems were that big around the base, and then they just went to nothing and then went up the top.